How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you here?
That's difficult to answer.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
this the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final scene of
What up, everyone? Happy Thursday. Welcome to The Cult. This is a show that I stream Monday through Friday around about 5 p.m. I don't know what is going on this week. I am just like, there's something in the air where apparently there was a time in my life when I was always early. Believe it or not, I'm like one of those people where I used to show up early because I was more comfortable like sitting around and doing nothing than being late. Like being late gave me a lot of anxiety. And now I'm just like, we'll get started when we get started. Nick Fuentes this is Nick Fuentes' fault. This is Nick Fuentes' fault. It's his fault. It's his fault for setting a bad example for me because as we know, I'm now taking my lead from a 26-year-old. Yeah. Well, you know what? Listen, we made it. We're here, and we're going to do something about Zionism today. And the thing we're going to do is we're going to watch this presentation from the channel of Stu Studio. We love Stu Studio, even though Stu Studio is a Zionist, and that's cool, man. I don't mind. You want to know why I don't mind that Stu Studio is a Zionist? Because Stu Studio does awesome work, and I don't care. Like, I have reached a point with my political journey where I am not tribalist. I don't care. As long as you do good work and you're an okay person to be around and you seem to have a good head on your shoulders, we can disagree on some particulars. We don't need to hate each other. We don't need to be enemies. We love Stu Studio. Stu Studio does awesome work. He goes into these presentations. He records them. He puts them on his YouTube channel. He breaks them down on his Twitter. He finds stuff that I have no idea how he finds this stuff. He is awesome. And so I don't care if he and I disagree with the particulars about what's going on in the Middle East, because his work more than makes up for any slight disagreements that we might have. And so I love his work. I definitely recommend everyone subscribe to his channel. I recommend everyone follow him on Twitter. He is at the Stu Studio on Twitter. He has done some of the best coverage of what is going on college campuses literally all year long. Stu Studio has been doing just amazing coverage, like far better coverage than I have, to be honest. Like there was a time when I was like, I'm going to do the best coverage of what's going on the college campuses, and then Stu Studio was doing such a great job. I was like, I don't even need to do this. Like Stu Studio's got it. Like I don't need to do this. I'm gonna focus on queer anarchism instead, and Stu Studio can do that. Like, see, because that's how it really should work, guys. Like, you know, people, just because I'm going after James Lindsay all the time, people accuse me. They're like, Carlin, you just don't want anyone else doing this. No, I want everyone doing this. I want everyone doing this. I just want people doing it with a very high degree of like quality and accuracy and stuff like that. I don't think that I'm asking for too much. So the reason we're going to war with James Lindsay, and we're going to talk about James in a second because he is, again, lying to people. Like, the reason we're at war with James Lindsay is because he is not being accurate. He is misinforming millions of people. He's making my job more difficult. But if James was being accurate, I'd have no beef with him. It's like Joshua Lissick and Jack Posobiec with their Unhumans book. I have no beef with them. Joshua Lissick did a great job with that book. I had Joshua Lissick on the channel. He was awesome. We love him. Stu Studio does a great job. He's awesome. We love him. Andy No is incomparable. He's awesome. We love him. I have no beef with people who are covering the left accurately, and I think that as many people need to be covering the left as possible for us to be able to be in a position to fight back, and I think the more angles that we can cover it at, the better for all of us. The difference is that James is lying. Oh, rationalist. Oh, we're going to talk about this in a second. Hang on, rationalist. I have that pulled up. Hang on. We're going to do a point of personal privilege. Yeah, fuck you, Milo. Fuck you. Milo was giving me shit in DMs because one of the reasons I was late is I was on Twitter and there was stuff going on Twitter. And I'm going to show you the stuff that was going on Twitter. But Milo was like, Carlin, just start the fucking stream and get off Twitter. And I was like, fuck you, Milo. I'm working on it. I do develop a relationship with my audience after a while, especially the ones that are in my DM groups. Nick, thank you. Good song. Thank you. Thank you for pointing me out to the name of it. So the name of the song on the intro, guys, this is from Siggy, who we love. And Siggy, let me get it up for you. Nick was asking about the song in the intro. I do have it on the intro screen. Why isn't it showing it? So the music from the intro is from Siggy, who goes by Holy Vacant, if you look up his stuff on Spotify. And the one we listen to on the intro is Godspeak. Whiskey is actually my favorite one from him, though, and he's got an album coming out soon, so I strongly recommend everyone go check out Siggy's music. They're just instrumentals up right now, but he's gonna be putting like an album out pretty soon. Follow him on Twitter. We love Siggy. I'm going on a road trip with him in a couple weeks. I cannot wait. He is the best, and I appreciate him, and I'm glad that you guys like his music, because I like his music and I think he's very talented and all that stuff. And so that's the answer to that. Thank you, Nick, for the super chat. So we are going to be watching this presentation today called Weaponizing Title VI, the Academic Engagement Network and the Redefinition of Zionism on College Campuses. To be honest, so this seems like it's an event from the Coalition to End Zionist Repression. It is unclear to me. It's unclear to me what direction this presentation is coming from. Is this a pro-Zionism presentation? Is this an anti-Zionism presentation? But the reason I wanted to watch it is that they are trying to redefine what Zionism means on college campuses, which I think is actually a really important discussion to have, because it's basically like trying to take critical race theory and applying it to Jews and Israel and changing the definitions of things. And I think that we should always be on top of the changing definitions of words, especially definitions around anti-Semitism, because that is becoming the definition of anti-Semitism has become very relevant in my life. Never before in my life have I cared if people were Jewish. Never before in my life have I wished evil on people because they're Jewish. Never before in my life have I wanted to see all Jews holocausted. I think that would be bad. That would be horrible. All genocides are bad. All genocides are bad, whether it's a genocide of the Jews or a genocide of the Palestinians. All genocides are equally bad in my eyes. I don't think one genocide is preferable to any other genocide. All genocides are bad. But the definition of anti-Semitism has become hyper-relevant in my life. Because if you don't agree with what Israel is doing in Palestine, apparently you're anti-Semitic. If you criticize Benjamin Netanyahu, apparently you're anti-Semitic. If you don't want the United States to go to war with Iran on behalf of Israel, apparently you're anti-Semitic. If you say that 5,999,000 Jews died in the Holocaust and not 6 million, but you think it's like a really high 5 million, apparently that's anti-Semitic. And it's just like, it's like if you even mention on Twitter that you might watch a video on BitChute, that's anti-Semitic. If you post a picture of Hitler on Twitter, that's anti-Semitic. It's like everything now is anti-Semitism. And it's like, you know what? Maybe we've gone off the rails a little bit. And I just want to know what this presentation is about. Milo says anti-Israel is not anti-Jewish. Well, I don't know. I don't hate anyone. I don't hate anyone. I want everyone to be fine. I want everyone to live a long and happy life. I just don't want to be accused of anti-Semitism when it doesn't really seem as though we can even agree on a definition of what anti-Semitism is. Yeah, Reagan, you're an anti-Semite. Congratulations. 5,999,998 anti-Semitic. Yep. And that's how absurd this whole thing is, guys. It's like when the left changed the definition of racism to mean like everything that white people do ever. There's a list in my last book, Actively Unwoke, about all the things that are considered to be racist. It's like cereal and hockey and trees and walking in the park and Buddha and meditation and mindfulness, and dogs were considered to be racist. Owning a dog was considered to be racist. Being a dog was considered to be... It was just like everything was considered to be racist. And at some point you just go, isn't this a little crazy? And the same thing right now is happening with the term anti-Semitism. So we're going to watch this presentation today and we're going to get a sense of what is going on. And again, I'm not exactly sure what angle this presentation is coming from, but we're going to find out. And that's what we're going to do. But before we get into that, we've got some orders of business to discuss. We've got some orders of business. Now, the first order of business that I want to discuss is this one. I'm going to be honest. I've been really busy this week. I'm trying to write a book. I'm taking tomorrow off. By the way, this is going to be, I'm not streaming tomorrow. I'm taking tomorrow off because Victor and I are going to go spend the day in Salem, Massachusetts, where the witches were, and it's going to be awesome, okay? And I'm taking a day off for once. So I've been really busy this week, and I've been really tired, and I just haven't been keeping up with my James updates as much as I should have. And so I wasn't aware that yesterday James tweeted this. So Nick Fuentes is going after Chris Rufo because Chris Rufo wrote an article in which he called for the censorship of groypers. And I gotta say, man, I've been saying for a while now, listen, and here's my opinion on Chris Rufo, and I stick by it. I think overall, for my purposes, Chris Rufo has been more a net positive than he's been a net negative, especially for the first couple years of him being in this space. I think he did a lot of good work. I think he did a lot of good work that most people didn't want to do. He did things that I didn't want to do. And I made videos, and you can go back and see, and I stick by every word of this. Chris Rufo did things that were necessary that a lot of people didn't want to do. And if he hadn't jumped into this space and done that, I might have felt some kind of like obligation to do it. But I really don't want to be doing what he's doing. And so I was always actually incredibly grateful that Chris Rufo stepped up and did what he did, because he did really, really, really solid activism for a couple years. In the last couple years, I've been less than impressed with him. And I haven't really gone off on this too much, because honestly, it's kind of like one of those things where I'm just like, it wasn't really him dicking around and trying to be overtly political and doing this whole fellowship thing with the Manhattan. It wasn't impacting my life, and it wasn't making my life difficult. Listen, the thing of it is again, I don't go after people for no reason. If I'm shitting on someone like I shit on James, There's a reason for it. Chris Rufo wasn't doing anything that impacted my life. He wasn't doing anything that impacted my work. I didn't think that what he was doing was particularly great, to be honest, but I was also like, I don't care enough. I don't care. It is not, like, Chris Rufo was not getting in the way of what I was doing, so I wasn't worried about it at all. I didn't agree with it. I didn't think it was good. I thought he was like prepping to run for office. I thought it was overly branded and just like contrived and inauthentic. And I thought it was way overly political. And I was like, there's obviously a narrative being pushed here. But again, I didn't really care. So I didn't really say anything about it. But now Chris Rufo is coming out and pretty much openly calling for censorship of people on the dissident right. And now I'm starting to care about it because, listen, here's the thing. I left the left for almost 5 years ago. Almost 5 years. Shit. About 5 years ago is when I first started red pilling. I left the left 5 years ago. And the reason I left the left was because there were a lot of people running around telling me what I could say and what I could think and what ideas I could consider. And I'm not cool with that, man. And if I'm not cool with that on the left, I'm sure as shit not cool with it from the right. And you know what? If James Lindsay and Chris Rufo want to be the good classical liberals of the internet, then they need to then they are not in charge of what ideas people can consider. Listen, man, you might find discussions about Hitler to be distasteful. You might find discussions questioning whether or not Winston Churchill was the grand hero of World War II to be distasteful. You might find discussions about, you know what, were the United States really the good guys in World War II? Were we really, though? Were we really? You might find that to be distasteful. You might find the fact that Hitler's speeches are now going viral on the internet because now people are using AI to have a better kind of like translation of them, and people are seeing like him actually speak like in English instead of German, which German is kind of a scary language if we're honest about it, but when you watch the AI translations, it comes across a little bit differently. People are now kind of listening to what Hitler actually said. You might find that distasteful. All of those things. Okay, it's fine to find it distasteful. I'm not telling people what they have to believe. I will never tell people what they have to believe. However, people have the right to have these discussions. People have the right to have these discussions. And you, James, Chris Rufo, anyone else that's trying to censor information, you don't have the right to not be offended. No one has the right to not be offended. If you are offended about discussions of Hitler and discussions of World War II, then don't engage in them. Just do something else. It's really not that hard. If you really feel strongly about engaging in it, then actually come to the table with facts and evidence, because honestly, World War II is one of the most documented events in like the history of humanity, right? If you have all this evidence at your fingertips, if everything these people are saying is so easy to debunk, if everything that Nick Fuentes says is so easy to debunk, then why don't you just do it? With facts, with evidence, with debates. You're supposed to be classical fucking liberals. But no, that's not what they're doing. They're instead calling for the censorship of information they disagree with, specifically naming the Groypers by name, and that's not cool, man. That is not cool. And I'm going to say this too. Like, I've been around the dissident right for like a good little while now, and honestly, I've been tracking them for like a long time. I started like messing around with them in 2021. There are far worse people on the internet than Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. There are far more toxic people on the internet than Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. There are far more hateful people on the internet than Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. Nick Fuentes and the Groypers are about as nice and just polite as you are going to find on that side of the internet. And I just don't know any other way to say this other than to say that Nick Fuentes and the Groypers are the biggest problem on the internet is absurd to anyone who has ever swam in the toxicity of the dissident right. And what I'm specifically referring to are Wignats. They are significantly worse than Nick Fuentes and the Groypers in literally every possible way. In every possible way. So much so that Nick specifically denounces them and refuses to associate with them. A lot of times, a lot of the most hateful stuff you see coming from that side of the internet is not coming from Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. And I understand this can be tricky for people who don't understand what they're looking at. But most of the time, the most toxic things that you see on the internet are not coming from Nick and the Groypers. They're coming from Wignats, who Nick and the Groypers specifically denounce. The Groypers are funny and usually good-spirited. Yeah. And so this whole idea that Nick Fuentes and the Groypers are the biggest problem in the history of the internet, no, bro, no, that's not hinged into reality at all. And the fact of the matter is they only talk about him because of how effective he is, because of how effective a communicator he is, because of how smart he is, because of how engaged his audience is. That is really why they're afraid of Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. It's not that he's dangerous. It's not that he's hateful. It's not that he wants to kill anyone, because he doesn't. It's not that his ideas are going to get implemented tomorrow, because they're not. It's because he is an amazing communicator. And he is able to rally an audience like no one else on the internet. That is why they're afraid of Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. So I find it a little funny. This is a long monologue to say that James Lindsay is off his goddamn rocker. Like, and I know that we all know this, but like, I just feel the need to address this directly. So Nick tweeted yesterday, after Chris Brunet exposed the blatant foreign influence scam at the Manhattan Institute, conservatives are now calling for tech censorship against conspiracy theorists on the right. If it isn't obvious, these people are not our allies. These are our occupiers. James Lindsay got a screenshot of that. And he posted, update. For those few following this mess, Nick Fuentes, Groyper King, does exactly what Groyper Mommy Carlin says, like I said the other day. I didn't tell Nick Fuentes to do this. I am being falsely accused. First of all, I don't tell Nick Fuentes to do anything. I don't even talk to Nick. I literally don't even talk to him. And I would like some evidence. I would like some receipts that I gave. Like, there is no universe in which, forget me specifically, Nick Fuentes is never going to take orders from a woman. Any woman. Like, and to say that I would be the woman that he's taking orders from, that's unhinged lunacy. So, no, James, no. Nick Fuentes is not taking orders from me. I didn't even know this thing with Rufo was going on until Nick started tweeting about it, because I wasn't paying attention because I was doing other things. And by the way, I actually have communicated with Nick in the past about Chris Rufo. It was in December of last year. I'll tell you exactly what it was. Nick was going on about Chris. I don't even remember specifically what it was, but Nick posted something in his Telegram group about Chris Rufo, and I DM'd it to him on Twitter, and I said something about Rufo, and I think it had to do with Rufo being married to like an Asian woman or something like that. I don't even remember what it was. But and Nick responded to me, and he disagreed with what I said. And I'm not going to like go back and show screenshots or anything, because I'm not going to do that. Nick has never done that to me. I'm not going to do that. But like, the basic gist of it is like, Nick posted something in his Telegram group about Rufo. I disagreed with it. I DM'd him on Twitter. Nick disagreed with me. And that was kind of like the end of the discussion. It wasn't even a discussion, really. It was like, I said something, he said something back. I kind of said, okay, like whatever. I don't really care that much. And life went on. But like, the moral of the story to this is like, I was actually on Rufo's side, and Nick was not on Rufo's side. And the thing is, Nick was right. Nick was right. I was wrong. I can admit it, man. I can admit when I'm wrong. Nick was right about Chris Rufo. I was wrong. And I should have listened to him then. And this is a lesson that I have learned over and over and over and over and over again in the past year, that Nick has a higher accuracy rate than I do, and I have a pretty damn high accuracy rate, but on this one he got me. He was right, I was wrong. So I find it really ironic that James thinks that Nick is taking orders from me, when in fact I'm kind of taking direction from him now on a lot of this stuff. So that's just unhinged from reality. And the thing of it is, too, people in the comments actually told him it was unhinged from reality. Like this woman says, as someone not following enough to understand, what is the relationship between your screenshot and Carlin? Did Carlin say the same thing, but first? Or is there some other way for us to know Nick made this post at Carlin's direction? I wasn't even talking about this. I literally wasn't even talking about it. There were other people in James's replies, too, that were like, that's kind of crazy, James. Here, I'll show you. This has nothing to do with her, retard. Also, he's 100% right. That correct. Has nothing to do with me. Fuentes was talking about this way before the crazy lady. True, he was. Yup. Pretending like Nick takes orders from Carlin is insane. Yeah, true. James says, evidence from the outside perspective is what it is. Can't help you there. It's super cringe and funny for you. What evidence? What evidence does James have? What secret Gnostic knowledge does James have about my non-existent communications with Nick Fuentes? Where are the receipts? And again, guys, this is one of those things, like, is this a big deal in and of itself? No, it's not a big deal in and of itself. But, like, the bigger question I have is, if James is lying about something so stupid, do you really think he's not lying about things that are, frankly, much more important than this? Do you really think that he's telling the truth about everything else, but on this one thing he's lying, and this is the only thing he's lying about? Okay, yeah, all right, yeah, that totally makes sense, bro. That totally makes sense. Yeah, James's source is he made it the fuck up. Exactly. So what else is he making up? You know, there's a reason that James screams Gnosticism, 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 Gnosticism. Because James is the one that believes that he has all the hidden knowledge that has no evidence in reality. And you know what he's really trying to do here? What I think he's really trying to do? I think that James is trying to get Nick to denounce me. That's what I actually think. James is trying to provoke Nick into saying, you asshole, I don't listen to women, and fuck her, and blah, 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 blah. He's trying to get Nick to denounce me. I don't think Nick is going to take that particular bait. I think he's a lot smarter than that. I think he's got much better things to do, but I think that's what James is actually trying to do. I think that's that he's trying to get Nick to denounce me. But whatever. I mean, it's amusing for me anyway. And listen, like, James wants to do stupid shit like this, then I'll just use it to say, James is crazy. He's making stuff up. There's no basis in reality for this. I don't even talk to Nick, which is actually the truth. But that's not even the only update. That's not even the only update, because as Rationalist says earlier, also funny how Chris Brunet has now turned on James and is asking people for dirt. Maybe he shouldn't have ostracized me. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny? Actually, let me just go back. Let me take you guys back to 2 days ago. I should have had this pulled up. I didn't. This is my fault. Let me take you guys back to 2 days ago. You remember that a lot of us, well, a lot of you guys said, when Chris Burnett started tweeting about his mission to drive James Lindsay insane, a lot of people reached out to me and they said, Carlin, why don't you talk to Chris Burnett? And I was kind of like, But But I tried. I really, really tried. I really tried to talk to him, and it didn't work out. And the reason it didn't work out is Chris Burnett is a man-child that's obviously on a coke binge. That's my personal opinion. I don't know for sure that he's on a coke binge, but he's certainly acting like he's on a coke binge, so far as I'm concerned. Like, I've never done coke myself, but I've been around people that have done it. And, you know, I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me he's on some sort of drug. Again, this isn't a personal opinion. I absolutely could be wrong here. Judge for yourself. He's definitely not smoking weed. Chris Burnett would not be acting this crazy and erratic if he was smoking weed. So I think that he's doing a lot of coke myself. But I could be wrong. Anyway, so when people started tagging me because Chris Burnett was posting publicly like, I want to drive James Lindsay insane, I was like, oh, bro, we have something in common. We have something in common, Chris, because I, too, have been working on driving James Lindsay insane for over a year now. And so I DM'd Chris Burnett, like, apparently too many times. And apparently, if you send someone a couple DMs about a topic that they're tweeting about, that's sexual harassment, apparently, according to groypers on the internet who decided to get on their knees and suck Chris Burnett's cock instead of actually listening to me when I said I don't think he can be trusted. But no, there were groypers, only a couple of them, but one with a very fucking loud mouth. There was absolutely groypers who said, you know what, fuck you, Carlin. We don't care what you have to say, and we don't want to be around you anymore because we're too interested in getting on our fucking knees and sucking off Chris Burnett's cock. And you know the irony of that whole situation is as soon as Chris Burnett blew his load down Hoplight's throat, he left his fucking chat and never looked back because, you know, maybe some bad decisions were made. I'm just saying. Fuck you, bro. And then after Chris Burnett blew his load, Chris Burnett cozied up to James Lindsay and said, James, I agree with you, James. That bitch is crazy. Well, it is true. It is true. It is true. And listen, man, and this is why I said yesterday on my stream, this is why I'm taking a step back from all the aggressive support I've been giving Nick. I'm taking a step back from interacting with a lot of the groypers so much. There are absolutely still groypers I'll interact with, but it'll be people that I'm creating content with that is completely separate from any of this bullshit. Because, listen, man, I've gone out of my way and have made a ton of sacrifices to defend Nick Fuentes for an entire fucking year. I have never wavered. I have lost friends. I have lost donors. I've lost contacts. I have never wavered for 1 second. And then the minute I say, I really don't think that coke fiend can be trusted because he's acting very erratically, the minute I get fucking dismissed, not by most people, just by a couple people, but by enough that I'm annoyed about it. And I get fucking booted. Because they want to suck Chris Burnett's cock, because no matter what I say and no matter what I do and no matter how many sacrifices I make and no matter how consistent I am, it will never fucking matter in the grand scheme of things. So I'm just taking a little step back, and that has nothing to do with Nick, and I love Nick and I adore Nick and I pray for Nick's success every single day, but I'm not gonna be fucking treated like that. Like, fuck this. Anyway, so after Chris blew his load, he cozied right up to James, and James says, I'm really glad you took my advice. And Chris Burnett said, like, yes, James, I am glad that I took your advice as well. Isn't that funny? And then 2 days later, 2 fucking days later, 2 days later, Hey guys, does anyone have dirt on James Lindsay? Please email me all the dirt you have on James Lindsay. Chris, you coke fiend faggoty motherfucker. Had you just calmed the fuck down and looked at the DMs I sent you, which, Chris, I gave you a teeny, 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 tiny little taste of what I have just to see what you would do, just to see if you would bite. But Chris, I have a massive fucking treasure trove of dirt on James that I've been sitting on because I know that driving someone insane is not an instance where we blow our loads on the internet. It is an instance where we are patient and we play the long game. And I'm going to be honest with you. I've actually talked to this guy before, the Dead Flag Blues. I've talked to him before. I know him. He is actually doing some interesting things with connections between organizations. He doesn't have all the pieces of it yet, but he's working his way there. He's doing it. He's pragmatic. I actually like him. I like what he's doing. But I have more dirt than him. What's the dirt? I will release dirt as I'm ready to release the dirt. Because here's the thing. I've learned a thing or two about, well, listen, man, you get stalked and harassed on the internet for a very long time. You learn a thing or two. And one of the things that I've learned is that when people are going after other people online, they tend to blow their load very quickly. I mean, I hate to keep making this euphemism, but it's so appropriate. It's like when people are doing this internet warring bullshit, they tend to blow their loads very, very quickly. And then once you blow your load, it's all over, man. It's really all over. And so one of the things that I've learned is that when you have information on people, it's much better to do kind of a slow drip of attacks over a long term where they don't really know what's going to happen and they don't really know what's going to come at them next, but you're just doing a slow drip of attacks. We've been doing a slow drip of attacks on James for the better part of a year. And it's that slow drip of attacks that's actually started driving James insane. I take full credit, well, maybe not full credit, I take at least partial credit for James's unhinged meltdowns about the woke right. I really do. And you can tell he's thinking about me because apparently he thinks that I'm giving Nick Fuentes orders that I'm not giving him. But part of the reason this is working is because we're dripping that out. Drip, drip, drip. It's like Chinese water torture, where we've got James in a cave, and that water is like bing, 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 and James doesn't know when the next drop is going to go, and he doesn't know what it's going to be, and we're slow rolling that shit. Because the minute that you blow your load is the minute that you lose all your power and all your leverage in the situation. Chris Brunet has already blown his load when it comes to Chris Rufo. Chris Brunet has nowhere to go from here. He's blown the load when it comes to Chris Rufo. I hope he got as much bang for his buck as he possibly could, because now it really seems like Chris Brunet's #1 mission is to ratio Chris Rufo on Twitter. Because you guys know that ratios on Twitter have an everlasting impact on what someone says and does. It's just like, it's all over after a person gets ratioed on Twitter, right? And so, am I inclined to share the massive amounts of dirt that I've been stockpiling on James for a year now? Nah. No, I'm not. Because, the thing is, I was accused of sexually harassing Chris Brunet by groypers with big fucking mouths because I sent him DMs offering to work with him on driving James insane. So you know what? I am but a stupid, incompetent, incapable woman, and I'm going back to the kitchen, and it is just really inappropriate of me to remind people that I have exactly what Chris Brunet wants. But I am just an incompetent woman, and Chris Brunet told me 2 days ago, fuck off, bitch, men are talking. Yup. According to Chris, women are just not welcome here, and so I would be, of course, crossing boundaries if I offered Chris Burnett the massive dirt that I have on James Lindsay. So instead, what Chris Burnett is getting in the replies are, he graped me, James touched me. You know, he's not getting anything of value at all. This was funny, though. Check this out. Check this out. For the first time in the history of the internet, Poetry Painter is correct. For the very first time in the history of the internet, we have a Poetry Painter W. Because you see, earlier this morning, I tweeted out this picture of Chris Burnett. And I said, do you know how you can tell if a man has a tiny penis? Here's how. I really don't think this needs any explanation. I really don't think this needs any explanation. And then Poetry Painter responded, maybe what Carlin said about you having a small penis and being on a coke binge is true. This is pretty sad. You know what? I'll take what I can get, I guess. I'll take what I can get. Gwen says, I have a feeling Chris Burnett will become very useful. I think I'll be vindicated on this. Hey, man, listen, and this is the God's honest truth, and I've said this a million times. I hope you're right. I really do hope you're right. I hope that Chris Burnett stops doing lines of coke. I hope he gets his shit together. I hope he reins it in a little bit more. I hope that it starts to kind of dawn on him that he is just fucking skewered any chance he has of ever being in the conservative establishment ever. I hope he gets his shit together, and I really do hope he becomes useful. Everyone should have a redemption moment. Everyone should have a redemption arc. We should always hold space for that. I'm just saying that at the moment, I am feeling rather vindicated because I'm in possession of the fucking treasure trove that Chris Burnett is asking for, and I'm just but a little woman who's not supposed to be involved in this space, and so I'm not going to give it to him, because if I gave it to him, that would be sexual harassment, wouldn't it? Too bad. So sad. Too bad. So sad. Anyway, do you guys want to get into the show? Let's get into the actual show, guys. We are watching today a presentation about the redefinition of Zionism on college campuses from our friend Stu Studio. Please mount the like button for me. Please subscribe to the channel if you are not already. And as a reminder, if you want to support the work I'm doing, you can head over to my Substack, which is Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. Sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. Your support keeps me in business. I am 100% funded by people like you. I have never had to go to work for a place like the Manhattan Institute. I've never had to shill for Moms for Liberty. I've never had to shill for Turning Point USA. I am 100% grassroots funded. That keeps me completely independent. So my only job is to tell you the truth and show you the receipts, and that's what we're going to do here today. We are going to be watching this presentation, and we're going to talk about it, and that's what we're going to do. All right. Let's get this party started, guys.
I'm going to begin with a bit of an introduction, and I'm going to try to continue admitting people as I do that. And also I'm going to begin recording this session. So FYI, if I can figure out how to do that. There we go. Okay.
Recording in progress.
All right. So folks, please mute yourselves if I didn't already mute you when you entered. Thanks so much. I will start us out here. So welcome to this talk on Title VI and the Academic Engagement Network. My name is Maya Gelman. I'm the director of the Institute for the Critical Study of Zionism, and I'm going to moderate this session. Among many important talks looking at this horrific period in history that we are all trying to survive, this is a particularly important talk. We're going to hear from the scholars that you see on your screen, who are doing groundbreaking research on the Academic Engagement Network and its relationship to the absolute avalanche of Title VI complaints that have been weaponized against students.
So what we're seeing here, guys, is it seems like we're seeing like an opposition research presentation. Now, the left actually does trainings in how to do opposition research. I know because at the Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference that I went undercover at a little like a year and a half ago or something. Hang on, I'm getting up. Why do people always call me when I'm streaming? At the Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference that I went undercover at, I actually did a whole training session on how to do opposition research. So the left actually takes this very seriously. They share this information. Hey, Stu, have you explained the painting? What painting? I don't understand, Stu. The one behind him? I have no idea what that means. What does that mean? I didn't look into it. Did they talk about it? Thank you for recording this, Stu. Thanks for doing great work as always. We appreciate you.
Faculty and staff who oppose genocide, and that is more broadly driving a season of academic repression. This is the 7th or 8th event in the launch calendar of the Coalition to End Zionist Repression on the campus and academia table of that coalition, which itself has been full of events that are intended to resource all of your efforts.
I was gonna say, this has got to be something related to like the Russian Revolution, right? It's Bolshevik propaganda. It is beat the whites with the red wedge. Thanks, Stu. It says wedge next to the triangle. We'll have to look that up. Hang on. Reds, communist, socialist, revolutionaries, and whites, monarchists, conservatives, liberals, and other socialists who oppose the Bolshevik Revolution. I didn't know that. You learn something new every day. Thanks, Stu. We appreciate that.
To stop state violence and repression. And I'll put that link in the chat, but you probably can find it in the same place that you found the information about this. It's bit.ly/campus-alliance, but I will also post that in the chat in a moment. Just to recap, this past year, we have seen how clearly U.S. civic and political institutions are willing to do violence, Palestine and Lebanon, potentially the globe, and also at home. And just because it's important to continually name these things, we're seeing police attacks on students, evictions, search and seizure just yesterday at Indiana, I think it was, deportation threats, terror charges instrumentalized by Zionist and white right political actors to silence their opponents, firing and unhiring of faculty, including some of us right here, spreading disinformation about the primarily Palestinian, Muslim, Jewish, BIPOC, and queer-led movement against genocide that endangers all of us every day. And as schools resumed in fall, several universities, including NYU, which is represented here, issued new policy that takes Zionist politics, having Zionist politics, and turns it into a protected identity like race. And this is an idea that Zionist advocates have been trying and failing to push into law and judicial precedent for years. And universities are now facilitating policy that's failed in the legal sphere. So these attacks increasingly weaponize the infrastructure of civil rights that was created to oppose racism and undo marginalization, even if we might have critiques of those structures. In particular, we're talking about civil rights agencies, anti-discrimination law, and DEI policy. As a historian, I can assure you that it is not new that the Zionist political movement has used the framework of civil rights and anti-discrimination to do this work. And just to be clear, by the Zionist movement, I mean, and I think we all mean, the political movement to develop Israel as a Western supremacist, Orientalist, colonial capitalist, Cold War project.
Wait. That was so many buzzwords. The political movement to develop Israel as a Western supremacist, Orientalist, colonial, capitalist, Cold War project. Wow. That's what they mean by Zionist movement. Hang on, let's listen to that again.
This political movement has used the framework of civil rights and anti-discrimination to do this work. And just to be clear, by the Zionist movement, I mean, and I think we all mean, the political movement to develop Israel as a Western supremacist, Orientalist, colonial capitalist Cold War project. What is
It's
new,
very clear.
I think we could discuss it, is the level of violence. We are likely at something like 120,000 people who are dead. The United States has sent something like $18 billion to fund it, and then told hurricane survivors recently there's no money for them. We've been hearing numbers since the start of the genocide.
Hang on. Gold Becoming says, I don't mean to interrupt, but is it worth examining that they almost always plead to history when making a point? Nope. It seems they're obsessed with historical revision. They don't believe it's revision, bro. They believe it's reality. So our goal here is remember, we do not debunk them. Our goal here is never, ever, 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 ever to debunk them. Our goal is to understand them. And so we have to make the assumption that they are saying what they believe is true. They are articulating a true version of how they see the world. Whether or not that's hinged into reality, that is for someone else to deal with. Our goal is only to understand, how do they see the world? What do they believe? What ideas are they advancing? How are they strategizing? Because if you understand how someone sees the world, you can predict what they're going to do next. And that's true regardless of what they believe is true or not. It doesn't matter if it's true. People act based on what they believe is true, not based on what is true.
Like the US defense industry is running triple shifts to supply this genocide with weapons. The numbers are staggering. But what's also new is the extent of cooperation between political sectors that call themselves Zionist or pro-Israel and other sectors that we might just think of as right-wing or militarist or tech industry or just capital, right? These are the forces that are now together leveraging civil rights discourse as a weapon, including weaponized federal Title VI complaints and civil rights lawsuits and DEI policy demands. And they are dramatically under-researched. So this conversation, the reason I say it's important is because we are hearing from scholars who are doing essential research on this area of unknown, under-researched violence production. And since tonight is Yom Kippur, I personally am especially thinking of them in that context, that the research and the commitment to sharing it is supporting life against death. So I'm really grateful to you three. I will introduce the three of you, and then I will turn it over to you. And then just to reiterate for everybody who has just joined, please mute yourselves. You enter unmuted. You got to do it yourself. I don't get to you. We are recording, and you can put any questions in the chat, and I'll moderate the questions. And if needed, if it comes to it, I will bounce people out of the meeting. I hope that we don't get to that. We've actually not had that problem so far, so that's wonderful. Sean Malloy is a professor of history and critical race and ethnic studies at UC Merced and a member of the UC Ethnic Studies Faculty Council, and also on the founding collective of the Institute for the Critical Study of Zionism. Mira Gold is
Can we look up the Institute for the Critical Study of Zionism? Guys, anytime you hear the word collective, that means a socialist organizing group. Almost like, with rare exception, like every once in a while it doesn't, but like 95% of the times it's going to mean a socialist organizing group. The Institute for the Critical Study of Zionism. Huh.
A historian of science, archaeology, and empire, currently based in New York City. She's held teaching and research positions at NYU, York University, the European University Institute, and the University of Cambridge. And she's affiliated with Institute for Critical Study of Zionism, home team, NYU faculty and staff for Justice in Palestine, and is the development coordinator for National FJP. And Zach Semlin is an associate professor of English at NYU, where he's also a member of faculty and staff for Justice in Palestine, and a member at large of the executive committee of the American Association of University Professors. So I'm going to get out of the way now. Thanks so much. Don't forget to put your questions in the chat. Take it away, Sean.
Thank you, Amaya, and thank you all for coming today. I want to kick us off by trying to situate the academic engagement network against a kind of larger backdrop of Zionist countermobilization against Palestinian solidarity on U.S. college campuses, because I think the AEN fills a particularly unique niche in that role, and it's helpful to understand where it comes from.
How is he making
And
himself
to do
float
so,
on
it
the
actually helps to
screen?
turn the clock back a little bit. While it is hard to believe now, prior to the early 2000s, Zionist organizations on campus had a relatively minimal
Hang on, bad cat. This is actually helpful. Orientalism is a term that describes the Western world's depictions of the East and the problematic views and power dynamics that it perpetuates. Thank you. I didn't know that. I don't think I've heard that term before.
presence outside of Hillel, which tended to brand itself more as a community space for Jewish students than it did as a Zionist organization. National Zionist lobbying groups, folks like AIPAC, the Anti-Defamation League, did give some sporadic attention to the campus. What I have on the screen for you now is some quotes from something called the AIPAC College Guide from 1984, which I will not read to you in the interest of time, but it is very interesting to see how even back in 1984, a lot of the rhetoric was similar. What was not similar was the level of engagement, right? While they were never entirely ignored, campuses were simply not a primary focus of these larger mainstream Zionist organizations, and there was relatively little in the way of formally organized and coordinated lobbying on campuses themselves. This begins to change in the early 2000s for reasons that you probably can put together, right? The collapse of the Oslo process, the Second Intifada, and most importantly, the rise of a grassroots BDS campaign and student organizing for Palestine on both American and British campuses. That growth in grassroots organizing led both the Israeli state and US-based Zionist organizations to begin to focus on the campus as a critical site of struggle. And in this respect, the AEN sits very neatly at the intersection of two forms of Zionist countermobilization over the last 20 years or so. And one response to, let's move here, there we go. One response to the rise of grassroots Palestinian activism and pro-Palestinian activism in the early 2000s was the creation of an entirely new set of Zionist organizations, many of which were either largely or in some cases entirely devoted to the campus. Older orgs like the ADL, AJC, AIPAC, they extended their campus operations. I know, just like all of you, I wake up every morning in my email to the daily campus crisis email from the ADL. But they were supplemented by a dizzying array of new groups in this period. Stand With Us, Israel on Campus Coalition, Campus Watch, the David Project, Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, Lawfare Project, Israeli Action Network, the Brandeis Center, the EMHA Initiative, Students Supporting Israel, Canary Mission, Alums for Campus Fairness, Zachor Legal Institute, the Maccabee Task Force, the Deborah Project. There is an entire list that I could keep reading for you that I won't in the interest of time. These national groups, as we'll see, are often directly or indirectly connected with one another, and they're also often allied with local campus groups.
It kind of seems, I'm just spitballing here. It kind of seems like there is a lot of Israeli influence on American college campuses. Why is there so much Israeli influence on American college campuses? This seems like a lot of influence on a lot of Israeli influence on American college campuses. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. His presentation reminds me of Max Headroom. I don't know who that is, but thank you, Kristen. If you care to elaborate, you don't need to send another super chat. I don't know who that is. Off the top of my head, anyway.
Most recently, we see something like the Jewish Faculty Resilience Group, or JFrog at UCLA. Now, at the same time as these Zionist groups are proliferating on campuses, there are parallel developments taking place behind the scenes at federal agencies in Washington, D.C. And a key player here is a guy named Kenneth L. Marcus. Marcus got his JD from UC Berkeley, and he ended up serving as the staff director for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights under George W. Bush. And while he is there, he helped pioneers a reinterpretation of Title VI. This is the Dear Colleague letter he writes in September in 2004, which would now apply Title VI to religious groups, including Jewish students, as a protected category. That in turn opens up a slew of complaints filed by Zionist groups against a number of campuses. And then after he leaves, the Commission on Civil Rights. He found the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights Under Law, which is an innocuous name for a group that is largely concerned with cracking down on Palestinian solidarity on U.S. campuses, particularly around BDS. So he then goes around and encourages the filing of lawsuits and complaints under the rule change that he organized while in the federal government. He then goes back into the federal government as Assistant Secretary for Education for Civil Rights under Trump, and then reopens some of the cases that had been previously closed. And then revolving door returns back to the Brandeis Center after his service under Trump. Marcus is very clear that even when these cases don't bear fruit legally, that they are designed to intimidate campuses, right? And he actually writes in the Jerusalem Post, these cases, even when rejected, expose administrators to bad publicity. If a university shows a failure to treat initial complaints seriously, it hurts them with donors, faculty, political leaders, prospective students. So we have these two trends beginning in the 2000s that have become very hyper visible since October 7th, and that is a proliferation of Zionist groups focused on the campus and the emergence of a federal legal apparatus under Title VI that allows these groups to weaponize as charges of anti-Semitism to bring legal and public pressure to bear on university administrators. And it's here that we get to a not-so-secret third thing, and that is the Academic Engagement Network. It's founded in 2015 by former University of California president Mark Yudof and Kenneth.
Hang on. No, I didn't watch Nick last night. I mean, I think he talked about like the Rufo stuff last night, and I know he was talking about Sneeko for a while because I heard about that, but I didn't watch Nick last night. I'm taking a step back from this stuff with Nick and the Groypers. I really am. And again, that's no shade on Nick. It's really not, because I adore him and I want him to be successful. But this whole thing with Chris Brunet has left a really, really, really bad taste in my mouth. And it's just something I'm like, all right, well, all right. Everyone makes choices. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what he said, but I'm sure it was great.
Waltzer, and its self-described mission is to oppose efforts to what they say delegitimize Israel and demoralize its supporters while protecting what they call the Zionist identities of.
Yeah. See, this was the thing. It's like, y'all know what I look like. You knew what I looked like when you invited me to AFPAC. You knew what I looked like when I was sticking up for Nick when other people wouldn't. You knew what I looked like when I wrote a big, long diatribe to Andrew Klavan when he was being an asshole to Nick a year ago. You knew what I looked like the entire fucking time. But you want to suck Chris Burnet's cock? And all of a sudden, you're going to attack me for pointing out that maybe he's acting a little erratically when he's obviously acting erratically. And all I didn't even do anything publicly. He did it all publicly. I was trying to communicate with him in private. And you want to attack me for that and accuse me of doing things I didn't do? That's when it's time to take a step back and say, I need to reevaluate how I'm interacting with this situation. And again, it's like really disappointing to me that it all played out like this. It's really disappointing that people couldn't hinge into reality and say, you know what? Carlin was actually trying to communicate in private. Carlin didn't do anything wrong. Carlin didn't even mention sex. Now she's being accused of fucking sexual harassment. Carlin literally did nothing but try to help that asshole. And now we're throwing her out because we didn't appreciate any of the things that she ever did for Nick in the first place. And we didn't appreciate her putting herself out on a cliff for him. And we didn't appreciate all of the sacrifices that she made to stick up for him. And again, this has nothing to do with Nick at all. It really doesn't. Has nothing to do with him at all. But I'm not going to be fucking treated that way. Fuck that.
Students and faculty. Now, well, the existence of the AEN is by no means a secret, right? They have their webpage. You can go look at a webpage. They have a YouTube channel if you're very bored. They maintain a much lower public profile than either big mainstream Zionist orgs like the ADL or the more campus-focused groups like Canary Mission or the AMHA Initiative. They don't rent out billboards or drive trucks around campuses. They don't mount big, splashy PR campaigns. Nor do they typically go around filing or threatening to file Title VI complaints. Rather, what they do is they operate quietly and opportunistically in the space between those two tactics.
Well,
so what often happens...
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna... Rationalist keeps provoking me, otherwise I wouldn't be complaining about this, but they damn well should know how much I've sacrificed to defend Nick. They damn well should know. They really should. But, listen, again, I want nothing but success for Nick. I really want nothing but success for him. But enough is enough. Enough is enough. Let's see what Stu's saying. I'm trying to find the chart of the foreign influence in higher ed. Obviously, China, Qatar, Saudis on there. Yeah, I bet that's true. AEN is as benign as it gets. It's a bunch of old retired college presidents and chancellors. Well, that's interesting. Japan was also really high on that list. Thanks, Stu.
Is that one of these more publicly facing Zionist groups will mount a high-profile attack on a university around issues of Palestinian solidarity. They will either file or threaten to file a Title VI complaint. And then the AEN will quietly come in behind the scenes. And usually they will directly contact the administrators of the university, often going through a DEI office, a diversity, equity, and inclusion office. And they will speak in these sweet tones of reason, or what passes for that for university administrators. And rather than
and this is the last thing I'll say about this too, and I actually really want to be very clear about this. There are a significant number of groypers that I have no problem with at all. There are a significant number of large groyper accounts that I've been in contact with and communicated with and have relationships with that had no part in the issue that I currently have. There really are. Like disproportionately so. What I'm talking about here is a teeny tiny little fraction of the people that and people might say, well, then why is this such a big deal? Because it is. Because it is. So I'm not throwing shade on any of the accounts that I have good relationships with. I really do hope I'll be able to keep those relationships, but you don't fucking slap me in the face like that. And I don't care if it was only one person that slapped me in the face. I don't care. I've sacrificed way too much in the last year. I've been steady. I've been consistent. I haven't flown off the goddamn handle. Unlike Chris Brunet. And if you don't get that, then you get what you get, man. You choose the people you lay down with. I never needed Nick's community to do my thing on the internet. I have a completely different community. It's probably better that I spend more time focusing on my stuff anyway, and that's just going to be the way it is. And again, I wish him nothing but the best. I really don't. I mean, I want him to get everything he wants.
Threatening, what they tend to do is they offer their services in the form of either speakers or trainings that promise to inoculate universities against the bad PR and legal threats that they are now facing as a result of Palestinian solidarity activities on their campus. And so I became aware of this when it happened on my own campus. I was involved in co-sponsoring an event with some colleagues from San Francisco State University that would have featured Leila Khaled as a speaker. There was a huge public outcry from Zionist orgs and politicians, right? The Lawfare Project sent a 6-page letter to my chancellor saying we're all going to go to jail for violating the material support for terrorism law. U.S. congressmen, right? There's all this publicity saying you got to cancel this. And then quietly, while all of this is going on, the AEN directly contacts the administration of my university. And they say, hey, we're not here to threaten you. But this looks very bad for you. This looks like your campus has a hostile climate. And we stand ready to assist you in dealing with the repercussions of this horribly anti-Semitic event that might transpire. Make a long story short, Zuman ended up canceling the talk.
Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start sending letters to college presidents every time they have a socialist on their campus. We should start, okay. I understand that what I'm about to say is not actually going to happen, probably, but we actually should do this. We should start our own ranking system of like leftist college campuses and like socialists on college campuses and create our whole ranking system. And that way, when a school has like a protest that goes really wrong or something, we can send them a letter saying it has come to our, and we'll name it something like the I don't know, we'll give it some sort of professional sounding name. And every time some school has some crazy protest on it, like we can send the university president a letter and be like, it has come to our attention that you are housing far left radical revolutionaries on your campus, and you know, we want to help you with this problem. Yeah, it's all. You might be right. It might already be on the list of 87 things I have to do. That would be funny if we create some like fake organization and we give it a really professional sounding name and we put up some website on the internet and we've got all this like woke college shit on it, and then every time something woke happens on a college campus, we send the campus president like an email or something, or a letter on like official letterhead saying it has come to our attention that you have some anti-American activity on your college campus, and we can help you solve this. That would be funny as hell.
Didn't happen, but the AEN got their foot in the door. And for the next 2 years, my campus's DEI office sponsored AEN events with the speaker Jill S. Jacobs on anti-Semitism. Her primary qualifications were as an engagement strategist focusing on revenue growth and educational impact.
Stu is
and again, her real qualification for this was her connections to the Academic Engagement Network. And it is not a coincidence that this went through the DEI campus. The AEN is explicitly targeting DEI offices in a way that is, by their own admission, somewhat cynical, right? This is AEN Executive Director Miriam F. Ellman speaking at their national conference in May of 2022, who says, I'm not particularly thrilled with the trends we're seeing in requirements for promotion and tenure statements on DEI. But in terms of our work at AEN, it's going to be a boondoggle, because it's going to give you a reason to be part of this network and then bring that back to campus. I'm not saying I'm supporting it in DEI. I'm saying we can like strategically use that. And I learned that from working with Evan Morris at Yale, in particular on this grant, how important it is for offices on the university to be able to say this counts for us in the diversity, equity, and inclusion commitment, that we can tick off a check mark on the box by supporting an anti-Semitism awareness effort. Now, this kind of behind-the-scenes work with campus administrators to try to shape their response to Palestinian activism on campus is a big part of what AEN does, but it's not the only thing. Using their long list of contracts, and again, if you look at their board, it's almost all academics and administrators. They also work proactively to provide resources and trainings for college and university administrators, right? They published in 2022 this wonderful guidebook on anti-Semitism, Jewish identity, and freedom of expression on campus. I'm not going to read you all these quotes. I want to move us along to our next speakers. But you know, part of the point here is that while the AEN is more low profile, it operates differently than some of these other Zionist groups, right? They tend to operate directly one-to-one with university administrations. Their goal is fundamentally no different from an ADL or a Canary Mission or an AMHA initiative, and that is to cement support for Zionism as a protected category while mustering administrative powers to contain or suppress Palestinian solidarity efforts on campus. And all of this long before October 7th. And I now want to turn things over to my colleagues who are going to speak about both the funding apparatus behind AEN and offer some insights into how this group is operating now in a kind of post-October 7th environment. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. And thank you.
Thanks, Sean. That was a great demonstration of sticking to your time.
You didn't even have to yell at me, Maya.
I didn't. Mira, you're next, right? I just want to make
Yes, I am.
Gotcha.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mira. So now that we've had that really wonderful introduction to the AEN's history briefly, and sort of where it fits into the broader ecosystem of this pro-Israel lobbying organizations outside and in academia. I want to give a brief overview, or as brief as I can, about the AEN's funding, its network affiliations, and overlapping board members and partnerships, and sort of what that can tell us as well about its overall tactics. So despite kind of, as we've heard a bit already, co-opting this, language of diversity and equity and inclusion and race, I want one consistent pattern is that there is a right-wing, anti-intellectual, ideological agenda across both the AEN's biggest funders and its leadership and board members. And then there is also, of course, its anti-BDS agenda, and it's very clear that that is one of the things that it promotes. But this also manifests in other ways, despite, beyond what they actually teach in their programs. So one is that, as I'll show you in a moment, there are several very close ties and partnerships with the Israeli government, particularly with the IDF and Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and especially the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs and Public Diplomacy, which was established specifically for fighting BDS globally, and even more specifically for doing that on US college campuses. You also see it in that the academic sort of representatives of the AEN and its recent additional arm that it's established, the Faculty Against Anti-Semitism movement, is that they are amongst the staunchest, of course, defenders of Israel. But that is not they're both conservative and liberal, and also that they have many affiliations with Israeli academia, either because they have teaching positions, Israeli universities, or because they have been, they are invested somehow in the tech and science startup industry there. Another trend is that we'll see a lot of overlapping with what has been referred to as the Islamophobia network. So sort of these watchdog groups that continuously perpetuate anti-Muslim and Arab, sentiments and narratives. And lastly, that we'll see that many of the overlaps kind of bleeds into debates that are ongoing right now outside of AEN. For example, in the AAUP, American University Professors, American Association of University Professors, and MLA as well. So I'm going to, okay. I'm going to move around this board. This is like a peek into my mind. So I'm only briefly going to touch upon the funders themselves. So as we've already heard, AEN was founded in 2015, and the initial funding came from the Charles and Lynn Schusterman Family Foundation, one of the biggest, I think actually the biggest by number private foundation that donates to pro-Israel organizations in the US. And that's currently run by Stacy Schusterman. And then also the Milstein Family Foundation, which is run by Adam Milstein. This was another person was added who I think gave the largest, as far as I can tell, contribution to the Academic Engagement Network last year was Bernard Marcus of Home Depot fame, among other things. Before I mention the rest of them, I just want to point out that what we'll see here is that most money is sort of channeled through the Israel On-Campus Coalition, which is an umbrella organization. So they, connect other organizations and really just kind of channel monies among their what they actually do. And then there are a couple of actual donations specifically to the academic engagement network that came from.
Imagine if the dissident right, instead of reeing all the time on Twitter about things that they just make up in their head, imagine if they actually focused their energy like the left is and did research like this instead of just like complaining all the time and calling people fat and ugly and doing all this stuff. Imagine how much further along things could actually be if they hinged into reality and did what was required rather than what drove their fucking outrage addiction online. I don't know, might be an idea.
That come from Stacy Schusterman and Bernard Marcus. And I want to say just briefly that, when we're looking at funding, it's not always a consistent marker of, say, a philanthropist's or the board members, politics. But in this case, there are some pretty clear overlaps. So I should say that, first of all, these are not all of them. I've just put on here some of the bigger ones. These are all billionaires who have inherited or earned, but mainly inherited their wealth from things like real estate investments, hedge fund investing, and oil and fracking, which is especially how the Schusterman and the Barron foundations made their wealth. These are also some of the biggest donors to AIPAC, and which I have down here. I didn't bother connecting it because it would just be too much. But to AIPAC and also to its sort of affiliated arms, that's including the American Israel Friendship League, which funds trips to Israel, and its charitable arm, the American Israel Education Fund. So Stacy Schusterman, Paul Singer, Joanna and Jonathan Jacobson, Julie Barron-Platt, and Bernard Marcus. And all of those names that I just mentioned are also notably major university donors, or in many cases also board members. So for example, Julie Barron-Platt, sometimes Julie Platt, is the new chair of the board of trustees at the University of Pennsylvania since December. It shouldn't be a surprise why she was graduated as chair during that period. And Paul Singer is on the board of Princeton, Jonathan Jacobson on the boards of Brandeis University and Harvard University. And finally, all of these board members are central parts to sort of the wider pro-Israel wing of the lobbying groups that operate in Washington, and kind of use some of those, either watchdog or lawfare tactics that we just heard about. Adam Milstein is among the more prolific funders of this type of work, especially in around campus advocacy and surveillance and doxing websites, and as well Miriam and the late Sheldon Adelson. So that organization is still funding a lot of these groups, and currently run by Miriam Adelson. And the last group here that I'll point out are these donor-advised funds, which are untraceable. In some cases, people call them dark money. Some of them operate also as organizations like the Jewish National Fund or the Jewish Communal Fund. They've become particularly popular ways to contribute for billionaires. Many of them also, I think all of them, fund some of these donor-advised funds as well. And it's popular to donate their funds to these donor-advised funds because they get immediate tax breaks and they get sort of put into a lower tax bracket. And some of these organizations fund really nefarious things like illegal Israeli settlements. So while we can't know who exactly has we can sometimes trace if somebody has donated to an organization, but often we don't know. It's untraceable. Okay. So I want to just move on to the ICC briefly, because it is very much connected to the AEN. In fact, the AEN is wholly a part of the Israel on-campus coalition. There is really none of its funding that comes from anywhere else. The vast majority, sorry, I'm just, right, okay. So the ICC was founded in 2002 as a partnership with Hillel. I'm just going to zoom in here. There's Hillel right there. Its CEO, Jacob Boehme, and as well as at least two other members that I know of are former AIPAC employees, and that is very important to keep in mind. ICC collects data and publishes data about the BDS movement in partnership with organizations like the Anti-Defamation League. In 2015, if anyone has seen the Al Jazeera documentary on the Israel lobby, where Boehme was told an undercover reporter about the ICC and its funding, and described their work as, quote, psychological warfare. And he also confirmed that the ICC shares surveillance data and intelligence with the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs. ICC also partners with a couple of organizations that did not make it onto this chart yet: the Network Contagion Research Institute and Census Limited. The AEN has also announced a new partnership with the Contagion, also works with Contagion Institute. And these are pro-Israel, specifically pro-Israel tech surveillance platforms that kind of come out of this startup nation in Israel.
Sarah, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second to give you your 3-minute warning.
Oh, geez. Okay. So I'm just going to then quickly move on to, thank you, the
This is a crazy network.
So I don't have enough time, nor would it be legally advisable for me to name too many specific names here. In terms of overlaps between the Academic Engagement Network and Faculty Against Anti-Semitism. I'm happy to return to this during discussion or questions after, if we'd like. What you have here on the right are explicitly pro-Israel, self-identified as such organizations, and organizations in Israel, either in the government or just think tanks, etc., that either of these, the board members of either of these two organizations are tied to. And on the left, you have universities that the board members are tied to, and you have other organizations that they're also tied to.
Seriously?
One of the organizations on this list that I want to quickly talk about is the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism, which was founded in 2004 and has since expanded to the UK and the US, most recently to NYU, where they're affiliated now with the Bronfman Center and the new NYU Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism. It was founded by Charles Asher at the time from Tel Aviv University. You might recognize him if you've been following those news from recent or the recent reportings about his reporting here to the Ways and Means Committee in Congress, where he is leading the charge to investigate SJP, Student for Justice in Palestine, on counterterrorism charges and on investigating university donor funding from Qatar, which is ironic because ISGAP was found to have received thousands of undisclosed funds from the Israeli government a few years ago. On their board are members of the Israeli state, including Nathan Sharansky, former prime minister, member of Likud, and Sima Vaknin-Gil, IDF veteran and head of the Ministry of Strategic Affairs. Also on that board is Carrie Nelson, former board member, chair of the AAUP. And he has, here is an article he co-wrote with Faculty Against Anti-Semitism board member Michael Sangar in 2003. And he is also Carrie Nelson leading the charge with Stephen Pinker, who is also an AEN board member, challenging the AAUP's recent reversal on boycotts. And the ISCAP also has several overlapping board members with AAEN and Faculty Against Anti-Semitism movement. We have Miriam Ellman, who we already heard about, and Erwin Kotler, who is a big name. He is also on the advisory board of the Louis D. Brandeis Institute, or Center for Human Rights, which we heard about, and other watchdog groups like Memory, right-wing groups like United Against Nuclear Iran, and UN Watch. And also former board of governors for the Jewish People Policy Institute, which is essentially a branch of the Jewish Agency for Israel, and the NGO Monitor, all affiliated with the Israeli state. And you have Ellen S. Cannon, who is an advisory board member for Faculty Against Anti-Semitism, professor at Northeastern and DePaul, board of ISCAP, and the American Jewish Committee, which recently hosted a giant gathering of university presidents to fight anti-Semitism. And as well, she is on the boards of the American Jewish Congress. She is formerly a consulate member of the Israeli consulate, Midwest Israeli consulate, and several Jewish federations. And finally, Amy Ellman, no relation to Miriam Ellman, who is a board member of the Amcha Initiative, who just put out a really delightful report on Faculty for Justice in Palestine. So I'll sum up, and you can, as I say my final 2 words, I'll just leave this on here if you can squint and see it. So this is only some, obviously, of the AEN's overlapping networks, though I would suggest that ISCAP is a particularly important one because it enables AEN to act like ISCAP as sort of an extension of the Israeli state. And despite these numerous sort of right-wing, anti-intellectual, pro-Israel biases, and in many cases, specifically anti-Palestinian, anti-Muslim, Islamophobic affiliations and bodies of work from its board members, the AEN markets itself as really this trusted academic authority on anti-Semitism, and in the process, their programs encourages this complete erasure of Palestinian lives and perspectives, as well as of anti-Zionist Jewish identities, and in pushing anti-BDS policies, despite having a complete lack of any expertise among their boards or teachers in post-colonial studies, race, ethnicity studies, etc. And finally, despite their claim that they work to, quote, promote academic freedom, they do the exact opposite, of course. They encourage and empower, to use their own words, universities to stifle all legitimate criticism of Israel, Zionism, and academic freedom of speech. And I will now pass it over to our colleague, Zach.
There's just a lot in this presentation. I'm just kind of taking this all in at the moment. There's just a lot here, honestly.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much to everybody for logging on, and to Amaya for getting this conversation, putting us in touch with each other, and to Sean and Mira for sharing your research, not just with everybody else who's here, but with me. I mean, I haven't done the same kind of deep...
Like my honestly, like the biggest takeaway in all this, Stu says, I thought it was ridiculous she expected them to be experts in post-colonial. Yeah, you're not wrong about that. Well, I mean, it's kind of like when you exist in that world, right, Stu? It's like you expect that everyone knows the same things you do because they all listen to the same things and they all read the same books and they all talk to the same people. So it doesn't actually surprise me that much, to be honest with you, because they have unhinged views from reality. But honestly, like my biggest takeaway so far from this presentation is just, listen, hey, Thank you so much for recording it, Stu. We love you. We love the work you're doing. Like always, best wishes to you, and drop by anytime. We appreciate you. But so my biggest takeaway so far from this is just like how far ahead the left is in terms of opposition research. And it's like, again, I don't care if you are on the Zionist side or the anti-Zionist side. I don't care what your thoughts are on what's going on in the Middle East. Like, I truly don't care. Like, everyone is welcome on my channel, regardless of your political views, as long as you play nicely with other people. That's really all I care about at the end of the day. But what I will say is, like, the left does the work in terms of really digging into the nitty-gritty of the things they are opposing, and this is part of why they're so effective, because again, this is why I do what I do. I'm trying to show people I am doing opposition research on the far left. That's what I do. I'm doing opposition research on the far left. I am the only person that I know of on the internet, maybe besides Stu Studio, and like there are a couple other people who do this, but like I am the, like, I won't say I'm the only person that's doing opposition research, but I'm the only person that's doing it live on the internet 6 days a week, trying to teach people as much as I know, breaking it down and all that stuff to not only do the opposition research, but to bring other people along with me when I'm doing the other research. And it's like, there should be so many people doing this. There's more information on the internet than we can ever possibly process. There's so many things we need to watch. We could spend all day, every day for the rest of my life watching far left presentations on the internet and still not scratch the surface of the amount that exist. And it's just like, it continues to blow my mind. Yeah, exactly. You mean to tell me that calling people fat and Jewish isn't opposition research? Exactly. Insulting people on the internet is not opposition research. Making up bullshit about the woke right because you don't like people on the internet is not opposition research. It's not going to solve any problems at all. It's not going to help anyone understand the enemy. It's not going to help anyone fight back. It's not going to do anything. Real opposition research is kind of boring if we're honest about it. And it's why we sit around watching a lot of presentations, and oftentimes I don't even talk during the presentations, because it's just like, it's like sometimes we just need to sit back and take it in, and sometimes we watch full presentations and nothing much happens in them. And that's just the way it goes, because that's what opposition research is. But no one wants to do it. Everyone just wants to be a crazy fucking moron on Twitter. And this is why we lose over and over and over and over and over again. Well, this is a really good point, Stu. They're professors and they use that position to do opposition research, which means also they're probably using university resources, because if you're a university professor, that means you have access to the libraries, which means you have access to all these databases. Now, you can get around that if you're not a university professor. There are tools you can use to do that on the internet. But that is actually a really good point. Like, they are using their university position and university resources to do opposition research on sometimes their own university and their own benefactors. Really good point. But you know what? I mean, there are people, there are conservatives that have university email addresses. There are conservatives that maybe they might be in graduate school, maybe they might have an adjunct teaching position, maybe they might work for a university, maybe they might, like, there are any number of ways you can get a .edu email address. Why aren't those people doing something? Or if you don't want to do it, give access to someone else to do it. I've had people in my community who are on school boards, like, allow me to access, like, their, like sign up for, like, they sign me up for things under their, like, edu email, because I can't sign up for it, but they can sign up for it because they've got a school email. And it's like, that's how I get access to some of the things I get access to. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes you have to be a little scrappy. But no, like, everyone just wants to spend all day complaining on Twitter. And it's like, you know, there are better things we could be doing. That'd be pretty great. And even if we, like, why don't we have an entire network of activists built up? Oh, because on our team, all the activists spend time infighting all the time, and that's all we do. Listen, man, Stu Studio and I disagree on some stuff. But do Stu Studio and I spend time flaming each other on the internet over the disagreements that we have? That's literally never happened in the entire time that I've been communicating with him, which I think has been probably about a year now. I mean, it's been pretty close. Like, we've been watching Stu's presentations a long time. Like, they're like, but people like Stu Studio, like, they are so few and far between on our side. And it's like everyone just wants to engage in infighting and nonsense. I'm like, there are a lot of people who claim to care about this issue. We could be working together. We could be building out networks of information. We could be helping each other. We could be helping each other gain access to resources. We could be mapping this stuff out about what the leftists on college campuses are doing very, very easily if we actually like put our like mind to it. But no, people just want to infight. Not Stu, because Stu's awesome, but like, it's so frustrating, man. It really, really, really is. We have so many opportunities. Yeah, Stu never fights with anyone. He just posts good stuff on his timeline, which is why you should all go follow him at the Stu Studio on Twitter. Just gets to work. What a concept.
Historical or political economic dives that they have, but I'm instead going to talk just about the partnership between AEN and NYU, where I work. So it's maybe a little more journalistic or ethnographic. That relationship between AEN and NYU stretches back several years, at least to 2021, possibly further. I'm doing my best to learn more about this relationship, in part by I've been trying to interview administrators at NYU who have been through the training seminars, the signature seminars, and have also been several of our administrators at NYU have been on the AEN sponsored trips to Israel that are the summer kind of culmination of the year-long seminars that they've done. And I'm planning to put together a report about this once I've done collected some more material that I think could serve as a kind of case study of what it looks like when an avowedly partisan Zionist organization like AEN gains what appears to be a kind of full and uncontested access to the disciplinary apparatus of an academic institution. I mean, based on Mira's chart, I have a feeling that this will be useful to people at other campuses that are undergoing similar repressive crackdowns. AEN seems very much to be in demand in helping schools to develop more strategies for censoring and repressing pro-Palestinian speech and activism that's even minimally critical of Israel's widening campaigns of destruction and genocidal violence in Palestine and now Lebanon as well. And at NYU, our repressive apparatus has really been getting a kind of workout. Over the last year, there's been dozens of students, faculty, and staff arrested, pepper sprayed. Faculty and staff have been staff have been fired from their jobs for speaking out. Students have been punished for protesting and forced to complete these kind of like infantilizing corporate ethics training modules. And our campus is, I mean, if I could show you out my window right now, you'd see there's just walls everywhere, cops everywhere. And I think that this is something that is really being facilitated by the kind of partnership that's going on between our administrators and the AEN. So I first heard about AEN recently after this summer, after NYU came to a closed door settlement with a group of Zionist students that were represented by Donald Trump's former lawyer, Mark Kasowitz, who had sued, these students had sued NYU last fall, alleging in kind of lurid and sometimes absurd terms that the university had failed to protect them from anti-Semitic faculty and student protesters in the days immediately after October 7th. Right. And for the most of last year, NYU had been pursuing the course of trying to have that suit dismissed. And not in a great way, but that was what they were trying to do. And then suddenly over the summer, they changed course. And here, I'll just, not that this text is especially illuminating, but they changed course and agreed to settle out of court in a private settlement. And so in addition to offering monetary rewards for the students, NYU also agreed to hire a new Title VI coordinator who will, quote, review and implement all applicable regulations and guidance from the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, and including OCR's 2021 and 2024 guidance regarding the use of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IHRA, definition of anti-Semitism and the accompanying examples. And that last part was a novelty on NYU, where we had adopted IHRA I'll talk about this in a moment, 3 years ago, but we had specifically not signed on to the examples, and now we seem to have done so. And NYU also agreed to issue an updated guidance to its non-discrimination and anti-harassment policy. And that came in early September and included now, on our campus at least, infamous and incoherent provisions that Zionism can be protected under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act because it's part of quote unquote Jewish identity. And also as a kind of corollary to that, the term Zionist can sometimes be treated as an anti-Semitic code word for Jew. And finally, as part of the settlement, NYU also agreed to, quote, strengthen its existing relationships with Tel Aviv University. So this is what's been, this is like the kind of general climate at NYU. And it's obviously just, been accompanied by increasing repression.
So essentially, do I have this correct? So Jewish lawyers are finding Jewish students and engaging in lawsuits to sue the university on behalf of these Jewish students who have been irrevocably harmed by having an anti-Zionist professor, even though it kind of seems like maybe those people aren't actually, like, those professors might not actually be saying anything against Jewish students. They're just saying something against Israel. But the Jewish students and the Jewish lawyers are interpreting anything that's against Israel as inherently anti-Semitic. And so then they're getting these groups of students together to sue the university, to pressure the university to have stronger ties with Israel. Do I have that right? That kind of seems like what's happening. Because it's going to be easier for the university to settle with the students by saying, yes, we will give you what you want. We will make stronger ties with Israel. Than it is going to be to fight the lawsuit in court, right? Wow.
In the ways that I've described. The Miriam Elman, who we've heard about, the executive director of the AEN, this is when I first came to hear about this organization. This is the guidance, and I can come back to this later if people want, but using code words like Zionist does not eliminate the possibility that your speech violates the NDAH, right? So Elman applauded NYU's settlement publicly on Twitter and commended our president, Linda Mills, and stating that AEN was looking forward to continuing to work with NYU administrators and officials. And this was the first time that most of us at NYU FSJP had heard of AEN and certainly of their sort of longstanding relationship to NYU. So we began to, when I say we, I mostly mean me and Mira, began to dig a bit. On Twitter, there were photographs of the director of our Office of Student Conduct at a summer conference where President Mills had also apparently given the keynote. On the homepage of the AEN website, there was a photo of Mills on an AEN trip to Israel. Articles turned up about other admin, a senior VP who was kind of felling about his training and his trip to Israel with AEN. I found a public document from early 2022 that talked about quote unquote regular meetings between AEN and senior administrators at NYU. And so what seems probable to me, and I'm trying to sort of establish this conclusively, is that NYU entered into a partnership with AEN in 2020 after the university had settled an earlier Title VI anti-Semitism complaint with the Department of Education Office of Civil Rights. And it was in that earlier settlement, now 4 years ago, that NYU agreed to adopt the IRA definition in its conduct code and also to partner with, at that point, I've read only the settlement, but they agreed to partner with an undisclosed outside organization in order to offer regular anti-Semitism bias and sensitivity trainings for admin. So that's kind of where that relationship, I think, most likely begins. I think what was striking to me about this, as I began to poke around, was not so much the length or extent of NYU's participation in AEN's training, but rather the kind of the imprint that AEN has clearly left on our updated NDAH guidance, right? So this is, right, this line here about, for many Jewish people, Zionism is part of their Jewish identity is, straight out of the AEN mission statement, right? So this is their homepage. This is the photo of our university president, I believe. And their mission statement is to mobilize networks of university faculty and administrators to counter anti-Semitism, oppose the denigration of Jewish and Zionist identities, promote academic freedom. And then again, they say, this is sort of throughout their guide and resource book for faculty and university leaders. There's just this continued sort of emphasis on the problem that it becomes for Jewish students when people criticize Zionism because it's part of their identity, right? So they're really interested in shifting that focus on Zionism from the political to the identity politics, I guess would be one way to say that. When I spoke to our director of student conduct about his participation in the year-long signature seminar training, he confirmed to me that this emphasis on identity was the main takeaway for him from his training. He reported to me that the training had helped him shift his understanding of the Israel-Palestine conflict, this is a quote, from a purely political discourse thing to something that involves questions of national and ethnic identity and therefore deserves a closer look. So throughout our hour-long conversation, he insisted several times that, quote, ideology didn't creep into the education with AEN, and that, quote, he never felt like he was being indoctrinated. And I did point out to him that you're not supposed to feel like you're being indoctrinated while it's happening.
True.
However, when I asked him to what extent Palestine in the broadest possible sense came up at all in the training, he was kind of like at a loss. The training was about anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism and not about Palestine or Palestinians, he said. And of course, it's pro-Palestinian protesters who are articulating these allegedly anti-Semitic views in this account. But this is, I think he basically treated this as a kind of logistical disciplinary problem that he was sort of insulated from needing to think about Palestine at all, right? So I'm trying to give like a little bit of a psychosocial analysis, just because these are the sort of functionaries that we're having to deal with while doing activism on campus, right? So substantive understanding about what protesters are actually protesting is unnecessary, and AEN sort of makes it unnecessary, and it's also in a sense a liability. Since a more lenient, if he were to sort of maintain that his more lenient attitude towards speech, it could itself expose the university to Title VI violations under the speech code that AEN has helped to draft, right? And this is again sort of consistent with the AEN line in their literature, which asserts things like, when anti-Zionist students march through campus chanting, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," they may be engaging in free speech, but it should be clear that the content of their speech is the eradication of an entire country and the violent murder of its citizens.
It's literally
right?
not, though.
So there's, again, just this sense that this is hyper insulated from thinking about Palestine, right? And in the nearly 300 pages of AEN's guide and resource book, the word Palestine
because this is an example of them trying to like redefine things. Like they're saying if someone says from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, they're trying to say that means they're calling for a literal Holocaust when they're not. They're calling for the decolonization of the land, which is the removal of the oppressive force of capitalism from the land. They're not saying that the Jews should die. They're not saying the Israelis should die. They're saying, get the fuck off our land. It's literally the same thing that they do with a land blessing. This is a land blessing. It's another form of a land blessing. Land blessings happen all the time. You might not like land blessings. That's fine not to like them. But the fact of the matter is, they're calling for the decolonization of the land. That's what that language means. They're not calling for the death of anyone. And this is how this stuff is twisted constantly by like the pro-Zionist lobby. And this is why it's really important that we understand their language, because we need to not only see through the bullshit on the left now, we also need to see through the bullshit on the right.
Standalone word, apart from frequent occurrences and quotations in the titles of groups like SJP, it appears only 2 times. Right. And it's a kind of realization, I think, of Saeed's point half a century ago the way that Zionism has hidden or caused to.
This is true for the same reason that, like, we know intifada does not mean kill all the Jews. Intifada means worldwide socialist revolution. We know intifada means worldwide socialist revolution because the goddamn socialists have come on my channel and told us that intifada means worldwide socialist revolution. And so it's like the same thing. We need to know that from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free is a call for decolonization, which means the removal of private property from the land, the return of the land to the indigenous collective, has nothing to do with killing anyone. Stuff like this gets said all the time. And again, like, you might not like it, and it's fine not to like it, but like, let's just be realistic about what these things actually mean.
Disappear the literal historical ground of its growth, its political cost, the native inhabitants of Palestine, and its militantly oppressive discriminations between Jews and non-Jews. Palestine is literally everywhere in the guidebook and nowhere. And this is, for example, the definition of Zionism that AEN has offered in the guidebook and that has been offered to our administrators. Zionism, in its most fundamental sense, is a quintessential progressive movement as it realized the national liberation of a historically persecuted people. And I'm going to wrap up, but I'm just trying to appreciate what it means that this is the sort of perverse understanding of this political situation that our administrators are being being trained to hold, right? Hang
on. Do I know if James is not gay? James is not gay. James is married to a woman. I know that for an absolute fact. And I know that for an absolute fact because James's wife apparently hate watched me for a long time and hate me. And that's why James spread a rumor about me on the internet that he told everyone I wanted to sleep with him, because James's wife used to apparently watch my content, like hate watch my content, and then hate on me to James. And I had no idea this was happening. I just found out about this like a week ago, and you can find the recording of the space where I found out about it on the channel because I played it for everyone. So yeah, James is married. He's posted a lot of LGB without the T memes lately. So no, okay. What he's trying to say is like, and that's not even correct, by the way. LGBT is fine. The problem is not the T, the problem is the Q. What he's trying to say is that being gay or lesbian is not the same as being trans, but he's missing the point because it's really about queer. Queer is the ideology that we care about. You do not need to be gay or trans to be queer. Just because you are gay and trans doesn't mean you're automatically queer. Queer is a far left political ideology. And so what he's doing with those memes is he's like, he's trying to separate out the political ideology from like just, you know, who you want to sleep with. But he's doing it incorrectly because T and Q are not the same thing. Trans and queer are not the same thing. He seems to think they are because he doesn't know what he's talking about. But they're not the same thing.
And, you know, I want to, again, I think that NYU is a good case study of this just because we've been doing it for a few years. And we seem to have really allowed this AEN a kind of untrammeled access to the disciplinary apparatus. It's got a kind of unrestricted role. And, you know, I think maybe just one final point is that clearly, you know, we need to see, I think that's all I got from slides. We need to see the NYU-AEN relationship in the context of this broader political campaign that Sean was speaking about to institutionalize and codify a fully ideological conception of Zionism. You know, this goal is shared by Israel, its defenders, and now also what we see in the U.S. By kind of right-wing ideologues who have opportunistically seized on the alleged anti-Semitism of campus protests as part of a broader assault on higher ed and civil rights. But one of the more unnerving things that I think came into focus for me from the conversations I've been having with this kind of middle management layer of our disciplinary apparatus at NYU is the extent to which that like politics is like not really part of it. Like I think for trustees, for presidents, funders, many colleagues, sometimes for middle management people, sometimes not, you know, there's this sort of shared ideological commitments either with right-wing and or Zionist, you know, interests. But with this middle management labor, there's kind of no stake.
He's saying that university administrations have shared interests with right-wingers. That's funny. That is a very socialist thing to say.
And instead, they see AEN training as akin to other kinds of outsourced university business and services that have become the bread and butter of the corporate university.
Corporate university.
And that means that they view complex problems like
socialists view the university as they don't like the university. I mean, we saw this with the campus protesters, like actually at Columbia. If you watch left-wing media coverage of Columbia and you see them do interviews with the campus protesters, one of the things the campus protesters say is that Columbia is an illegitimate institution. Well, they're literally going to Columbia. Why do they think it's an illegitimate institution? They think it's an illegitimate institution because they believe that the job of the university is to train people to engage in capitalism. The university has capitulated to capitalism. The administrators are basically like the people in charge of processing the students for insertion into the capitalist system. So when he called it the corporate university, that's what he's referencing. And that might sound weird because we talk all the time about how the left took over the universities first, and they did, but that's from a faculty perspective. And faculty sometimes feel like, I worked in higher education for 10 years. Faculty and administration are like this. Faculty and administration fight all the time. So it is true that the left does control the university from a faculty perspective, and that gives them control of the students. However, they also do believe that that the university is a capitalist corporatist institution, and they believe it's illegitimate in that regard. Does that make sense to everyone? So in other words, these people who are faculty members at institutions have absolutely no problem with tearing down the institution that they themselves are a part of, because their ultimate goal is always and forever to abolish capitalism. That's above everything else. And so they very literally view the institutions that they're privileged to work at as institutions that they need to destroy in order to achieve their goals. And we've read what is, I always forget the name of this paper that we read about the colleges. Hang on. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. Anarchist Library. Hang on. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. An anarchist library. Hang on. I'm going to know the name of it as soon as I see it. College. It might be university. Oh, look at this. I just found a paper called Inside the Capitalist Education System. That's not what I was looking for. Let's see. Shoot. Ah! University. No, it's saying I can't search right now. Try again. The function of the university. I forget, but we did once listen to a paper that was actually hang on, let me see if I can just find it on my YouTube channel real quick, because this is just gonna drive me crazy until I find it. Let me see. University. Is that what it's under? I forget the name of it. But No. Let me just see one more thing. I'm going to be able to find this paper as soon as we're done this presentation, I promise you. Okay, I can't find it right this second. Dang, I've done a lot of videos about universities. I didn't even realize. Dang. Anyway. I'll find it at another time. Oh, you guys couldn't even see all that. I will find it another time. Yeah, I always forget the name of this one. Maybe I can find it while we're listening.
Protest of U.S. complicity with Israel's genocide in Gaza, strictly in terms of the calculative terms of liability, right? So yeah, I mean, it really does feel like this is a major piece of the problem, I think. It's maybe obvious, but I think it needs emphasizing, because it sometimes seems to me that we misunderstand the way that administrators think or fail to think, assuming that they simply don't know or have been misinformed about the distinction between Zionism and anti-Semitism, or about how Zionist ideology functions by occluding Palestine and Palestinian life from its own history, which is true. They definitely don't understand that, and they have been misinformed, and they probably will never get it. But what seems to me no less important is that the liability approach actually encourages and maybe even requires them not to know, right? Not to know these things. And instead requires them to adopt a kind of micro-fascistic corporate or bureaucratic mindset in which the less you know, the better, because knowing something can itself be a kind of liability, right? And I think that AEN supplies them, like this is sort of what they're in the service of providing to a certain, from the university administrator perspective, right? It supplies them with the exemption of having to know anything substantive. And while at the same time, it's clearly fulfilling its own ideological aim of institutionalizing Zionism and undermining civil rights, right? So I guess, the main lesson, I mean, I've been like rereading The Authoritarian Personality to try and figure out how to talk to the disciplinary administrators at NYU.
Oh, wow.
And I guess the main lesson is like, run, like, don't, if your
That's
university has
funny.
not yet partnered with the AEN, like you should, try and figure out how to prevent them
Actually, you know what?
from
I
doing
sent
so.
this
And,
Andy note
we
to
need
him.
to do, we need probably partly through legal struggles over Title VI liabilities, we do
I
need to
sent this
expose
to
the
Andy Noe in a
AEN with its
DM one
veneer
time.
of academic legitimacy as the explicitly biased and partisan organization that it is, and it doesn't hide that. Right. And I think that not just legal suits, but also a kind of labor struggle seems really central to the way that we can resist something like the AEN. And I know that our graduate student union has been trying to think about the way that AEN implemented these changes to our non-discrimination and anti-harassment policy as a kind of change in the terms of employment. So if you're at a unionized campus, like this seems like a really important arena. But at the same time, yes, I think we need to be exposing AEN in this sense, but there's also this other component that seems really important to me is just of recognizing that for the corporate apparatus or administrative apparatus of our universities, having the better argument is not only besides the point, but is really, I think, and sometimes they perceive it as dangerous or a liability. And I think we need to be also thinking about that as a kind of terrain.
I found it. Yes, Andy No does communicate with me. He doesn't advertise it, but he does. He does. It's called Communique from an Absent Future. Oh, but no, that's not what it is. No, oh my god, I can't type now. Communique from an absent future. Let me see if I can find it. No, it's still not coming up. Anyway, I do have that document now.
Of struggle in its own right. So I'll stop there. Thank you guys so much for listening.
The terminus.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Life.
I'm gonna spotlight all of our speakers again, and we have I can figure out how to do this. We have questions from the chat, which I will pull from. We're at 1 hour. I think we probably could take another 15 minutes or so if our speakers can stay to talk about questions. I'm just going to start with, so we have some sort of technical questions, which I think indicates how much people really are starved for knowledge and information about how this stuff works. So just the question of, like, when you mention partnerships between AEN and other universities, what is the relationship? Are universities paying for it? Is there financial stuff involved? What does it mean?
Has anyone, I mean, I can guess. I haven't actually looked into it.
Reagan.
So if either Sean or Zach, if you know the answer to this specifically, you can answer. But I think it's tied to Zach, what you just mentioned about it increasingly outsourcing some of this, programming universities. And so, in other words, yes, it's absolutely, they're paying for it. But maybe an extra factor to consider is that in those overlapping board memberships that I was speaking about, those include the universities. So, it's almost like this, like circular, a thing where you have some of the board members are also funding universities, and, we don't know if universities are investing in certain programs, for example, which is part of the effort to disclose. So good question. I don't, if either of you have more information.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the contracts that went around either at my university or elsewhere. My guess, and this is an educated guess, is that a lot of this assistance is being provided either at low cost or free. Because these are very, as Maris documented, these are very well funded organizations. And I think it is particularly, I mean, obviously this is happening everywhere. It's happening in NYU, but I do particularly worry about smaller public institutions that are often cash strapped, right? And so you get, your state university, you get put on blast on media and by your local representative from Congress because of all the quote unquote anti-Semitism as a result of Palestinian solidarity. Oh my God, what are we going to do? We're being sued. And then in comes the AEN saying, hey, we gotcha, right? Here's a list of speakers you can have for low cost or free. Here's some training.
This is a really good point. I mean, he's laying out the fucking scam. He's laying out the scam. The scam is that these Israeli organizations, these Zionist organizations, put these universities on blast all over the media because if a group of students protests in favor of Palestine, then the Israeli organizations put these universities on blast in the media saying, your students are anti-Semitic, your students are anti-Semitic. Maybe they even find a group of Jewish students at the university and they get a group of Jewish lawyers to help the Jewish students sue the university because of all the anti-Semitism they're experiencing as a result of these pro-Palestinian protests on campus. Then these Israeli-backed groups reach out to the university and they say, we hear you've had some problems with some anti-Semitism on campus, and we'd really like to come in and train you on how not to be anti-Semitic on campus, and we're going to provide you this for free so that we can come onto your campus and help you be less anti-Semitic. And that's the scam. That's the scam. That's so kind of like simple and clear and obvious, and at the same time it's kind of like, let's listen again. And he's saying like, I'm pretty sure they're providing these services for free. They're not even asking the universities to pay money. So, and he's right about the differences between like private universities like NYU and like state public universities that might not have the money to do this. If you are a public university and you get an offer for like, we will come in and help you be less anti-Semitic because you're having some anti-Semitic media problems right now, and we'll do this for free because we just want to make the world a better place and we just want to reduce the amount of anti-Semitism on campus, and we're funded by Israel to do it. But we just want to reduce the amount of anti-Semitism on campus, and so we'll do this for free. The public universities can be like, yeah, come on. Like, you want to give us stuff for free? Do it. Like, and they're not even going to think about it, honestly. It's quite a scam.
And I think it is particularly, I mean, obviously this is happening everywhere. It's happening in NYU, but I do particularly worry about smaller public institutions that are often cash strapped, right? And so you get, your state university, you get put on blast on media and by your local representative from Congress because of all the quote unquote anti-Semitism as a result of Palestinian solidarity. Oh my God, what are we going to do? We're being sued. And then in comes the AEN saying, hey, we gotcha, right? Here's a list of speakers you can have for low cost or free. Here's some trainings. And, obviously, even in a place at NYU that is not underfunded, this is a potentially compelling argument because even rich universities, particularly rich universities, do not like negative publicity. And so this is an inoculation against that, or at least from the Zionist side. But I really do particularly worry about smaller places where there's less attention. They are very cash strapped. And, if I'm an administrator at a small state college and there's this crisis going on and this group that, again, speaks in the register of the university, right? Unlike some of these organizations that are going around, blanket attacking the university or doxing students, the AEN knows how to speak like an administrator because they are administrators. And so they come in very reasonably and offer you things at a low or free cost. Again, haven't seen the contracts, but that's certainly my guess. And it's very tempting, right? And I think Zach's point about outsourcing is here. It's outsourcing the thinking, right? It's not even outsourcing. It's not just outsourcing the material aspects of providing training. It's outsourcing the thinking. And I think both, for administrators, they don't want to think and they don't want to spend money. And the AEN solves both of those problems at once.
Just a quick follow-up point as I was thinking about this in terms of AEM programming. I think everything we just mentioned, Sean, is absolutely true for some of the external programs. For example, the year-long seminars and workshops that they have for administrators and the trips that they send administrators on to Israel. But one of the major things that they do, like all of these sort of pro-Israel advocacy organizations, is they train their members to do the Hasbara for them, to do the legitimization of Israel for them. So you have at individual universities, I only spoke about board members, but of course you have like hundreds more at every university college who are trained in the talking points, and they might hold seminars free of charge if they work there, for example, or students might do it in collaboration with Hillel. So in that case, it's free. Is another kind of component of it.
Yeah, I would just add, like, the reason why I use that word partnership is because both sides are getting something out of it. And it's not the same thing, right? So I do feel like there's a kind of collaborative or partnering aspect to it. And one side is getting to promote their ideological perspective and kind of institutionalize it, and the other side is sort of getting off the hook from having to take any kind of make any kind of commitment to reality, the nightmare of reality.
So there are three buckets of questions that I think we could probably get to if we group them. The first is just about like how to access this research and data sharing and stuff. So Mira, there was a question about whether your mapping is available, and then another question about what does it actually mean to trace the Israel on Campus Coalition back to the JNF. And I want to just sort of, I guess I want to ask you, Mira, if you're planning to produce this in some way that can be shared.
Yes.
Or any of you, actually. I know there's more than.
Yeah, really good question. I think I'm so much at sort of the research and investigation stage, and it's kind of overwhelming, actually, all of the connections. There are ways to work on things together, or even, with the Institute broadly as well. If you want to, make use of the research in terms of, that map is something that I just produced out of the research that I did. So I'm happy to share that, as is, if you want to, email me or get in touch. It's freely available information, basically, from tax filings and things like that I've just kind of cobbled together. So, but also, yeah, I will publish. I haven't figured it out is the answer.
Okay, well, one thing we can do, I see there's also some questions in the chat about, links to the resources. We'll package stuff up and send it out. And I think the short answer is also that there's more like forthcoming, because this is work that's underway, and right. So another bucket of question is, what are the possibilities for intervention here? So one person is asking, is it possible to use the IRA definition calling for not singling out Israel, or not giving it special negative attention in the other direction? I also have questions about what you were saying, Zach, about the sort of agnosticism of the DEI staff who are taking these trainings. Like, where are the levers for intervention that you see?
Well, I do think that this, like, we need to start thinking of these, like, the kind of corporate administrative structure as a kind of fascist or micro-fascist structure. Like, it just seems to me like that's kind of how I find it very useful to think of that sort of blankness in the face when I'm talking to this, director of our student conduct office, very busy guy. He feels very besieged. He feels misunderstood, but he's, there's a kind of emptiness inside of him that is like, he's shielding himself from having to have an experience that is not stabilized by what he learned, or what this training is supposed to provide for the university with. And I think that, to me, again, that does kind of rule out, to a certain extent, engaging with this in terms of a kind of liberal argumentation, right? And on the other hand, I think it's necessary. Like, obviously, a place like NYU, they clearly only understand the language of lawsuits, right? So part of any struggle is going to probably involve an argument that something like this kind of redoubled commitment to the AEN has produced a hostile environment itself, and there will be a kind of Title VI countersuit that could be put together by that. But that is also,
for the record, I don't actually think the biggest story about this presentation is like the academic engagement network specifically. It's just it to me, it seems to be one of like a million different pro-Israel organizations that are probably working on college campuses. Like, the bigger story to me about this presentation is like the process of it all, because I'm betting they all kind of follow the same basic sort of model for how they do this. And so it could be the academic engagement network, it could be a million other organizations. That doesn't really matter. What matters is how they do it. Does that make sense to everyone?
like, feels sort of, dangerous and depressing from the perspective of higher education, even if it has a kind of locally enabling impact on our capacity to protest what's going on in the world. So I do think that the kind of labor struggle aspect of this feels to me like a really important piece. Like, it's just another kind of collectivity that doesn't have to be evacuated of ideas in order to produce power. And I think that's, and I say that as, obviously, like, that, is not something that's immediately available to tenured faculty at private universities in the United States, but it still feels like that is the kind of template, and probably, in my view, like the place where this needs to begin.
Yeah. I mean, I think if this last year has made anything crystal clear, and I think it was probably already clear, is that the existing institutions around us will not save us, right? Whether that is university administration or whether that's fire, right? And we're talking about in the chat. And we obviously, we continue to exist in those institutions and continue to need support. And so, I think Zach's research is a good example of why it does make sense to speak with administrators, right? To talk with these folks. On my campus, a number of us emailed our administration when we realized AEN was doing these things, and we did, I think, talk them out of doing it. But at the same time as we engage with the administration, I think we need to recognize that universities, as currently structured, are acting this way for a reason, right? The system is what the system does. And the crucial thing we need to do is organize our own institutions to counter this, right? I think it's why the work of the Institute for the Critical Study of Zionism is so important, why the institution building that's being done across the movement is so important. Because while we cannot ignore these institutions, we do have to work within them and work with them. We cannot rely upon them to save us. And that means building our own bases of knowledge and our own bases of not just knowledge, but power. And whether that's through unions or whether that's through things like the ICSZ, that ultimately is where we need to go, because none of the institutions of our current society is prepared for this moment.
And this is part of it too, about, starting with, do people know about the AEN? Because at this point, a lot of academics, even if they've already been, faced with repression and censorship, or their students might not even know who's sort of behind some of these, kind of changing in policies and things like that. And I do think there's a way, and this is, we're going to be launching a sort of Drop AEN campaign shortly. And I think that's important because we've seen that awareness around some of these issues, either not just in academia, but publicly, actually has a profound impact. A few years ago, most people didn't know who AIPAC was. And now there is a giant pushback against AIPAC lobbying. Same thing with, in much thanks to some of Amaya's work, the ADL, and now also into Hillel as well. So I think we need to start kind of putting AEN up in that list of these organizations that should be dropped, even though they operate more behind the scenes. So that is the extra, I think, challenge.
I want to ask one question to get us to sort of wrap us up. I will just say I see Andrew's question in the chat, which is the question of like, what do they know about us? But are we mapped in the same way?
Oh, that's a funny question, isn't
aside,
it?
aside from Canary Mission, or do these organizations understand how we work? But I want to sort of put another angle on the question, which is, what do you expect the pushback to be? I will just say, so Drop the ADL from Schools launched like a week or two ago. And today the
what?
ADL put up a very...
Drop the ADLs from School launched? What the hell's that? Why don't I know about this? Why isn't anyone on the dissident right talking about this? Oh, wait, they're too busy calling people fat and ugly on Twitter and causing all sorts of nonsense over nothing. Drop the ADL in schools. If only people were actually covering this. If only the fucking dissident right would get their fucking shit together and do something instead of on the goddamn internet. Open letter to progressives. The ADL is not an ally. We are writing to ask you to reconsider the Anti-Defamation League. ADL is a partner in social justice work. Hang on. Many organizations in our communities find themselves in spaces with the ADL using its anti-biased education materials or counting on the ADL to support political goals. In light of a growing understanding of ADL's harmful practices, many progressive groups are rethinking those relationships. Even though the ADL is integrated into community work on a range of issues, it has a history of an ongoing pattern of attacking social justice movements led by communities of color, queer people, immigrants, Muslims, Arabs, and other marginalized groups. Well, and this is certainly written in leftist, while it's aligning itself with the police, right-wing leaders, and perpetuators of state violence. More disturbing, it has often conducted these attacks under the banner of civil rights. This largely unpublicized history has come increasingly to light as activists try to work to make sense of the ADL's role in condemning the movement for Black Lives, Palestinians' rights organizing, and Congressional Representative Ilhan Omar. We are deeply concerned about the ADL's credibility in some social justice movements and communities is precisely what allows it to undermine the rights of marginalized communities, shielding it from criticism and accountability while boosting its legitimacy and resources, even when it may seem that our work is benefiting from access to some resources or participation from the ADL. Given the destructive role it too often plays in undermining struggles for justice, we believe that we cannot collaborate with the ADL without betraying our movements. This primer lays out some of the ADL's practices. We hope this can open conversations. 18 million people. What? Oh no, that's an organization. Sorry. These are all the signatories. Wait, I saw Dream Defenders. This is a socialist organization. I know that's a socialist organization. I mean, I'm sure many of these are a socialist organization, but I know Dream Defenders is social, like specifically them. Democratic Socialists of America. This is a great guys, this is a great list of socialist organizations. Like separate from how you feel about the ADL. This is a great list. Familia, the queer trans liberation movement. We should look up Jewish Voices for Peace. Queers Against Israeli Apartheid. Wow. Showing Up, that's socialist. I know them. Teachers for Social, that's socialist. Red Nation, we've watched Red Nation on this channel. The Red Nation were the ones that did the Love is Capitalism presentation. Wow. Full list of organizational signatories. How helpful. How helpful for us. Thank you. Webinars. Oh, this has been going on a long time. This isn't even new. This was going on before October 7th. This isn't even new. Do they have a YouTube channel? Where is your social media? It says drop the ADL from schools specifically. They've got a whole activist kit. Again, this is stuff that, like, this just pisses me off so much. Literally all we have, Code Pink, we've gone inside Code Pink webinars before. Palestinian Feminist Collective, Radical Teacher. There's so many, these are all leftist organizations. These are all far left organizations. Literally all people have to do, guys, like literally all people have to do is rethinking schools. Rethinking Schools is one of the primary socialist school networks that we track. Abolitionist Teaching Network, we've infiltrated their webinars before. All people on the right need to do is do a copy fucking paste of what the left is doing. That's literally all they have to do. But no. What they'd rather do is complain all day on Twitter and call people fat and ugly on Twitter and call people insane on Twitter when they could just be accessing specifically what the left is already doing and then take what the left is doing and copy it and do it for our side. That's all they have to do. No, bridge too far. You want to know why? Because that's real work. That's real organizing. That's real activism. It's not entertaining. It's not sexy. It's not insulting people on Twitter. It doesn't get you retweets and hearts and clouts and dopamine fixes and all that bullshit. It doesn't feed any outrage addiction. It's just like work to do. And real work is a lot less exciting than bullshit on the internet.
Specific guide on how to teach about anti-Semitism in K through 12 schools. So it doesn't mention, you don't mention your oppo, right? But clearly there's some sort of move to push back. There's also similarly, Drop Hillel has sort of announced itself, and there is now suddenly news articles about they're trying to cancel Hillel. So I just, if you could give us one or two sentences, no more, on how you anticipate the pushback from AEN and the forces that are sort of working with it on this kind of revelation. Top question.
Well, it's already been mentioned that the AEN doesn't really do doxing, which is why it's important to note that they have overlapping board members with, for example, Initiative, because and that is the closest thing I've seen to them trying to trace at least the academic side of it, sort of, Faculty for Justice in Palestine. I think it's a good sign that they were already acting in defense this year, as opposed to going on the offensive, which is the main strategy of Israel's anti-BDS programs, because they set up Faculty Against Anti-Semitism specifically as a response to Faculty for Justice in Palestine. And to the point of Maya's note in the comments, they fundamentally don't understand how grassroots organizing works. So whereas their infrastructure relies on top-down astroturfing, lots of money and power, not that many people, we rely on people, some of whom are very deliberately careful not to share their identities because they will be doxxed. And yeah, maybe those of us who haven't been doxxed sufficiently might get some more of it, but I also think that tactic is getting tired and people see it for what it is. When you call a bunch of, anti-Zionist Jews, for example, anti-Semitic, it really means nothing. And it's quite sad, actually. So, that's my thought on it. I'm sure they will retaliate, but I think we are.
They're even saying, the anti-Semitism thing is getting old. No one really cares about it anymore. Ha ha, too bad, so sad. You can't hurt us.
Stronger, and that we have more people.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I don't think it'll come from the AEN. I think it'll come through these other orgs. And, the question of, are they meeting behind closed doors to work out this strategy or not doesn't really matter. They're all on the same page ideologically. They believe the same things. They all read each other's press releases. They don't even need to have meetings. And if it follows the past pattern, a lot of the response will be to target individuals, right? Try to pick off individuals, make them feel isolated and alone and under threat. And it is all the more reason why we need to be emphasizing practices of solidarity with each other. We need to defend each other. We need to organize, because while we have many, it's hard to leverage that power if we're not organized, right? If we are mini working in isolation, we are easier to pick off. We are easier, even if they don't pick us off, just exhaustion is going to take us down, right? So finding ways to organize effectively together, communicate effectively together, events like this one, right? I didn't know Zach and Mira before this event, and now we do. And so this kind of, I think the work that's being put on by the coalition, Amaya, is serving that purpose, right? It's not just about education, it's about connecting people and getting people in spaces where we find who we can trust. And we build our power together because, you know, as they say at the end of every rally, we keep us safe.
Yeah, I would just add that once you've read the AEN's guidebook together, you're bonded for life. It just, no matter whose side you're on, actually.
I might call it DEI for Dummies. It's like the best. Seriously, some of the pamphlets.
Great.
It's
All right.
DEI
Well,
for dummies.
thank
That's
you all
fucking
so
hilarious.
much for the research and
All
for
right, that's it, guys. We made it through the end of the presentation. I mean, again, like I don't really care about the AEN specifically. Like that doesn't really like interest me at all. What does interest me is just the process of it, and you know, that drop the ADLs in school things. I hadn't heard about that before, so that's a new thing for me. It doesn't surprise me that that exists, by the way, but it's a great resource for, like, you know, socialist organizations and things like that. We could really maybe find some stuff, some organizations that we haven't heard about. And I mean, that's a good reminder, too, to look for these kind of like coalitions around things because they love making lists. They love making lists of things. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for tonight. Now, as a reminder, I am taking tomorrow off. I'm taking a day off. I haven't taken a day off in a long time. Not really. And I'm going to Salem, Massachusetts tomorrow, and I'm going to spend the day around witches and magic things and witches. And Jennifer told me I had to get a broom to sweep away negative energy, and I'm going to get crystals and a new deck of tarot cards, because the deck I have of tarot cards, I'm missing a card and I don't know where it went, but I don't have the correct number of cards, so I got to get a new tarot deck. And we're going to go to, thank you two ladies, I appreciate it, we're going to go to haunted houses. There's pop-up haunted houses for October in Salem. And tomorrow night, maybe, I don't know that for sure we're going to do this yet. I got to plan our schedule tonight, because I asked Victor, I was like, is there anything specific you want to do? He's like, no, you can do whatever you want. I was like, really? I can plan the schedule. I can do whatever I want. So apparently there is a giant-ass cornfield outside of Salem where they've created a haunted cornfield. And so they've created a big, giant outdoor haunted cornfield, and apparently there's like a 17th century cemetery involved, because this is Massachusetts, so it's like, I mean, I live in New Hampshire, but Massachusetts is not that far away, and so like I'm gonna get to go to a haunted cornfield after dark, and there's gonna be and I'm really excited about it. And so I'm taking the day off tomorrow. There will not be a stream tomorrow. There will not be happy hour tomorrow. Well, the last time I went to Salem, they did have a whole wand store. So maybe I will but you know, I talked about this with Jennifer on Tuesday. Like, I'm a little bit nervous to get a wand, because I feel like a wand is an extension of yourself. Like, a wand is a powerful thing, and I feel like it's something that I would mess around with. And I feel like I would accidentally put a spell on someone that I don't mean to put on them, because I'm not a witch. I don't do spell work at all. I know how to read tarot cards. I know about astrology. I'm pretty intuitive, but I'm not a witch. And so I feel like if I got a wand, that would possibly give me too much power. And I don't want that, because I do believe in karma, and I believe that I will reap the repercussions of whatever I sow. And so if I accidentally put a spell on someone, I'm going to experience the consequences of that. And it's maybe not out of the realm of possibility that I would do that. Alex says, definitely stay sober. Pinky, so yes, I'm absolutely going to stay sober. Absolutely. But guys, I will see you back on Saturday for Socialism Saturday, of course. And in the meantime, please make sure you head over to my Substack. If you missed the clip that I put up today, or if you missed the stream yesterday, I did a great explanation. I thought it was a great explanation about why whiteness means capitalism. This is especially good for new people who might not have their head wrapped around this yet. You can catch that clip over on the Substack. That is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And if you appreciate the work I do exposing all this stuff, breaking it down, teaching it, please sign up for a membership. $8 a month, $80 a year. You guys keep me in business. You guys allow allow me to do what I do. I really do appreciate it. You can also head over to the Unwoke Art store. That is unwokeart.com. You can find the link in the description below. This is the best merch store on the internet. By the way, I didn't talk about this earlier. Not that one. This one. This is James Lindsay's merch store. Because James posted something about merch on Twitter. I was like, what kind of merch does James has? James's merch sucks. James Lindsay's new Discourses merch sucks. Look at this merch. I am a woman. It's all plain text. It's got this like Keith Haring inspired thing. This I feel like is a blatant ripoff of something that I did. I know exactly that frame. I've used that specific frame. That's in Canva. James's merch store sucks. Do you know what's a much better merch store? My merch store. My merch store is so much better. You can get a yard sign in my merch store. You can get awesome anti-communist Halloween-inspired t-shirts and sweatshirts and glasses and mugs and stickers. You can get zine-inspired anti-communist shirts. You can get all this cool stuff that's inspired by like Andy Warhol and like pop art. And there's some Banksy-inspired stuff too. My merch store is way better than James, okay? My merch is better. The quality of my merch is better. The design of my merch is better. I am better in every possible way, and if you want to support the work I'm doing, you can head over to the merch store and get the best anti-communist merch on the internet. I got all sorts of stuff in there. Holidays are coming up. We're going to be getting into holiday sales pretty soon. Isn't that going to be crazy? Some of this merch I haven't even talked about in a while. Anyway, I've got a lot of merch in my merch store, guys. You can check it all out at unwokeart.com, and of course, all purchases do go to support the work I'm doing, and I really appreciate it. And it's way, way, way better than James. Way better. On every possible level. I know we're all shocked at this revelation. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got. I'll see you on Saturday. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. And I'll see you soon. Bye, guys.
How are you feeling?
Well,
How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.